Chapter 1674. In the air above the arena, Ouyang Ling Xie's body emitted a vast and boundless cold qi. A terrifying sword will surged in the air, as if it wanted to freeze the space. 9. Evil Sword Seal. Nie Tian felt that Ouyang Ling Xie's qi had suddenly increased. He couldn't help but frown and exclaim in his heart. He felt that there was an extremely terrifying power surging in Ouyang Ling Xie's body. It was as if there was a wild beast roaring in his body. Waves of cold qi were like terrifying tentacles spreading in the air. The air became dark and heavy, and the cold qi emitted a chilling aura. Nie Tian felt that the cold qi in the air was oppressive. It could actually penetrate through his star soul armor, as if it wanted to invade his body. After Ouyang Ling Xie released the 9 Evil Sword Seal, the invading power of the 9 evil cold qi became even more terrifying. Little brat, it is your honor to die under the 9 Evil Sword Seal. Ouyang Ling Xie's qi surged, and his eyes became even more evil. Even his voice was filled with coldness. Is that so? Nie Tianling laughed. There was no fear in his eyes, only a strong desire to fight. I will take your life with this sword. Ouyang Ling Xie roared. His body moved, and a sword shadow rushed towards Yi Futian. Instantly, the space became stagnant. The sword shadow passed by, leaving a trail of cold qi behind. Nie Tian felt the terrifying cold qi in the air. His eyes flashed, and he immediately swung his sword. The surging sword was infused with the vast power of the Star Soul. Boom! When he swung his sword, what whistled out was not a sword shadow, but a huge fireball. It was like a fire dragon rolling out. For this attack, Nie Tian used the Starry Sky ancient martial arts Starry Sea burning star flames. He wanted to test if the fusion of the Star Soul and the Thunderbolt Sword could suppress the 9 evil cold qi. Kaboom! In the next moment, the two forces collided in the air. Instantly, the ice and fire qi exploded, and the space was filled with the glow of the ice and the fire. It was extremely strange. In the blink of an eye, Nie Tian felt a wave of cold energy fiercely rushing towards him. Caught off guard, the dreadful 9 evils cold qi rushed into his body. However, he reacted quickly. The 9 dragon veins revolved, and a deep dragon roar came from his body, forcing the 9 evil chill out of his body. That was close. Nie Tian frowned and steadied himself. He felt that the 9 evil cold qi had become even more terrifying. If he hadn't reacted fast enough, the cold qi that had rushed into his body would have been enough to freeze all the meridians in his body. Ouyang Ling Xie was much stronger than Nie Tian in all aspects. Nie Tian's advantage was that he had more sword wills and a stronger martial body. Ouyang Ling Xie's eyes were not filled with joy when he forced Nie Tian back with his sword. Instead, he was shocked. He did not expect Nie Tian to be able to block his sword even after he had activated the 9 Evil Sword Seal. Bastard, your strength is beyond my expectations, but that's all there is to it. The next moment, Ouyang Ling Xie's eyes were filled with determination. He said coldly, "This battle is over." Ouyang Ling Xie realized that Nie Tian was a strong opponent since he did not manage to kill Nie Tian with his sword. He felt a sense of danger from Nie Tian, so he was even more determined to kill him. Boom! Ouyang Ling Xie raised the long sword in his hand. A sword aura shot into the sky like a giant dragon. It was like a pillar that stood between the heavens and the earth. How terrifying! When the crowd saw this, their faces darkened and they shouted. They could feel the cold air in the air. It was terrifying. Are you going to risk it all? Nie Tian looked at Ouyang Ling Xie and knew that he was going to use his strongest move. However, Nie Tian was hesitating. He was not sure if he should use the 3 forbidden skills. He was confident that if he used the 3 forbidden skills, he would be able to kill Ouyang Ling Xie in a second. However, he did not want to do so because there was still a High God Ring Master waiting for him. Bastard die! At this moment, Ouyang Ling Xie roared and slashed down with his sword. The giant sword shadow was like an ice mountain, pressing down on Nie Tian. Crack! 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 In an instant, the space was frozen, and there was a terrible, tearing sound. Tian frowned slightly. The power of Ouyang Ling Xie's sword was beyond his expectations. Even if he wanted to use the 3 forbidden skills now, it was too late. At this critical moment, Tian did not panic. The blood qi in his body surged, and the sword qi was like a wind blade, tearing the frozen space around him. Then he stabbed out with his sword. The star soul flame on the sword was released, and a terrible blood-colored sword shadow appeared. There were blazing flames surging on it, and its momentum was magnificent. At this moment, everyone held their breath and opened their eyes wide. They did not dare to blink, for fear that they would miss the most exciting scene. Boom! In the void, under the watchful eyes of countless people, the giant ice sword and the giant flame sword collided. There was a loud explosion, and at the center of the collision, a rolling wave of ice and fire spread out. The momentum was surging, sweeping everything in its path. Chi, chi, chi. The cold chi and the flaming sword fought, collided, and swallowed each other. The whole space was filled with sword chi, blood chi, cold chi, and flames. These 2 people are so terrifying. The crowd looked at the terrifying scene in the air, and their eyes trembled as they exclaimed in their hearts. The intensity of this battle was beyond everyone's expectations. Boom! At this moment, the 2 swords in the air finally could not withstand it anymore. Almost at the same time, they exploded, and countless sword shadows wreaked havoc in the space. Tian and Ouyang Ling Xie retreated at the same time and stood in the air, staring at each other with cold eyes. So close! Tian frowned, and a trace of blood could be seen at the corner of his mouth. But in his heart, he heaved a sigh of relief. The collision just now was too dangerous for him. He had underestimated Ouyang Ling Xie's strength and almost failed miserably. Fortunately, the Star Soul Flame had a suppressive effect on the 9 evil force. Therefore, Tian was able to withstand Ouyang Ling Xie's sword. But even so, he was still slightly injured. The 9 evil sword seal was indeed terrifying. It increased Ouyang Ling Xie's strength by several times. How is this possible? Ouyang Ling Xie had injured Tian with 1 strike, but his face was extremely gloomy. He had used all his strength in that strike just now. Originally, he thought that he could kill Tian instantly, but he did not expect that he could not even injure Tian. Ouyang Ling Xie could not believe that the person standing in front of him was really a late-stage middle deity. The 9 evil sword seal is indeed terrifying, but you are too weak. You can't unleash the full power of the 9 evil sword seal. Tian became cold, and he sneered. Then his face turned cold, and he said in a deep voice, "Next, it's time for me to use my sword." The 9 evil sword seal was powerful, but Ouyang Ling Xie was too weak. Chapter 1675. Without any hesitation, Tian activated the Dragon Mark Talisman. Strange dragon-shaped runes surged out, and his aura skyrocketed. Ouyang Ling Xie suddenly sensed that Tian's aura was skyrocketing. Even his strength had improved. Ouyang Ling Xie's face stiffened, and he was speechless. With the activation of the Dragon Mark Talisman, Tian's strength skyrocketed from the late stage of mid-god to the early stage of high god. He only activated the Dragon Mark Talisman and did not use the Taboo Dragon Bloodline or Taboo Dragon Soulbone. He felt that the Dragon Mark Talisman was enough to deal with Ouyang Ling Xie. It's that rune power again. When Mo Yanwei saw the terrifying magical symbols around Tian, his eyes couldn't help but tremble, and he cried out in alarm. What a strange rune. It can actually enhance Tian's strength. Feng Buyu frowned as he sensed that Tian's body was improving. He was puzzled. He had seen many rune formations, but he had never seen such a terrifying rune power like Tian's. Tian, how much strength have you been hiding? Feng Buyu smiled bitterly in his heart. He finally realized that his worry for Tian was unnecessary. On the arena, Tian activated the Dragon Mark Talisman with all his strength. A cold smile appeared on his face. He stared at Ouyang Ling Xie and said, It's time to end this battle. As soon as he finished speaking, Niet Tian raised the longsword in his hand. Two terrifying flames surged on the blade and magically fused together. The power of the chaotic flame and the star soul flame, coupled with the power of the dragon mark talisman, is enough to kill you. Niet Tian's lips curled into a cold smile. The forbidden move of the proud sword skill, the third move of the 3 strokes of annihilation. Blood devours the firmament. Niet Tian let out a bellow. His flesh aura and sword intent surged madly as he slashed his sword down towards Ouyang Lingxia. Boom! Blood chi, sword intent, primal chaos flame, astral soul flame. These 4 terrifying energies fused together as a blood-colored sword shadow that was blazing with flames shot out, resembling a fire dragon that shook the heavens, exuding a tyrannical aura. Seeing this, Ouyang Lingxia's eyes trembled. He then released the 9 evils cold chi from his body and enveloped him within a radius of a few thousand meters. Boom! In the next moment, the giant flaming sword bombarded the frozen space. It was as if it had collided with an iceberg, and the huge sword suddenly stopped. Crack! Crack, crack, crack. Almost at the same time, a crisp sound was heard, and a huge crack appeared in the frozen space. Immediately after, the 9 evils cold chi around Ouyang Lingxia started to crumble, and the great flaming sword came crashing down on him. No! All of a sudden, Ouyang Lingxia felt a real killing intent. He screamed in agony, and his voice became shrill and piercing. Never had he imagined that Niet Tian's strength would actually be so formidable, and it far exceeded his expectations. Only now did he realize that he was no match for Niet Tian. However, it was too late for him to realize this. Pist, pist, pist. The great flaming sword slammed towards him, breaking through the 9 evils cold chi. An ear-piercing sound could be heard in the air, and it sounded like a death knell from hell to Ouyang Lingxia's ears. If Niet Tian's ultimate attack landed, Ouyang Lingxia would definitely die. Don't kill him. At the moment when Ouyang Lingxia was about to die, a low voice suddenly sounded in Niet Tian's mind, and it sounded extremely nervous. At this moment, someone actually transmitted a message to him. When Niet Tian heard this voice, he couldn't help but frown. Immediately after, his aura suddenly weakened, and he withdrew the long sword in his hand. The great flaming sword shadow in the air suddenly weakened. Boom! In the next moment, the great flaming sword shadow bombarded Ouyang Lingxia's body, and he was sent flying. However, he immediately stabilized his body in mid-air. Because Niet Tian had suddenly withdrawn his attack, the great flaming sword shadow's power was greatly reduced, and Ouyang Lingxia was not seriously injured. Mr. Ouyang, Niet Tian's figure stood in midair, and he suddenly lifted his head to look at a figure and calmly called out. The person who appeared at this critical moment was none other than the head of the Ouyang family, Ouyang Fu. Niet Tian heard Ouyang Fu's voice, and that was why he suddenly withdrew his attack. Thank you, young man. Ouyang Fu stabilized his body, and when he saw that Ouyang Lingxia was fine, he couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief, and his expression became much more relaxed. As soon as he arrived, he saw the scene of Ouyang Fu's death. He wanted to help, but it was too late, and he could only transmit his voice. He didn't expect Niet Tian to really stop when he heard his voice. Mr. Ouyang, you're too kind. Niet Tian smiled faintly. He knew what had happened to Ouyang Fu, and he felt that the latter was a tragic person, so he was willing to give him face. Father, Ouyang Lingxia was still in shock, and he took a few deep breaths before he looked at Ouyang Fu. His eyes couldn't help but flicker, and he spoke in shock. He obviously didn't expect Ouyang Fu to suddenly appear here. Sire, I'm glad that you're fine. Ouyang Fu nodded with a smile, and he couldn't hide the love in his eyes. His wife and son had died a tragic death, and he only had one son, Ouyang Lingxia. He treated Ouyang Lingxia like his own son, and he loved him even more than his own son. He had completely made up for what he owed his wife and son to Ouyang Lingxia. If Ouyang Lingxia died, Ouyang Fu would really go crazy. He really didn't want to experience the pain of losing his beloved son again. Father, I only wanted to avenge Ouyang Can, so... Ouyang Lingxia immediately calmed down, and he bowed slightly, as if he was very guilty. Sire, don't say any more. I know everything. Ouyang Fu nodded lightly, then looked at Nietan and said, Young man, thank you for not killing Sire. The Ouyang family will not pursue what happened to Ouyang Can, okay? Nietan nodded slightly, and he retracted his aura. He glanced at Ouyang Lingxia, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. He clearly saw that when Ouyang Lingxia first saw Ouyang Fu, he didn't show joy, but fear. To be more precise, he had a guilty conscience. Logically speaking, when Ouyang Fu appeared, Ouyang Lingxia should be very happy. Why was he afraid? He was here to avenge Ouyang Can, and there was nothing to be nervous about. Why did he have a guilty conscience? Ouyang Lingxia, you must have something to tell Ouyang Fu. Nietan thought to himself, and then he looked away from Ouyang Lingxia. Ouyang Fu doted on Ouyang Lingxia too much, as if he could only see the latter's good points and not his bad points. Ouyang Fu wouldn't doubt anything that Ouyang Lingxia said. Sire, let's go. Ouyang Fu looked at Ouyang Lingxia and said calmly. Ouyang Lingxia looked at Nietan, and although he was very unwilling, he moved to Ouyang Fu's side and was ready to leave. Mr. Ouyang. At that moment, Nietan suddenly raised his head and looked at Ouyang Fu. He sent a voice transmission to Ouyang Fu and said, Mr. Mo has something to talk to you about. Can you come to the Mo family's courtyard tonight? Ouyang Fu's eyes darkened, and after thinking for a while, he nodded and agreed. The Ouyang father and son didn't stay any longer, and they left immediately. Nietan looked at the two of them, and the corners of his mouth rose slightly. He thought to himself, Ouyang Fu, it's not Mo Yuni who wants to talk to you. It's me who wants to talk to you about something. Chapter 1676. Nietan defeated Ouyang Lingxia and won his 20th battle. Next, he would fight against the superior god Ring Lord. After a while, a figure appeared in the sky above the ring. He descended directly, and his aura was surging like the mountains and the sea. Superior God Ring Lord. The crowd saw the figure and couldn't help but exclaim. Without a doubt, this person was the superior God Ring Lord of the Ghost King Palace. Nietan looked at the person and felt his aura, but he smiled faintly. This person was different from the previous two Ring Lords. He didn't have the residual heart-soul seal curse in his body. He was a normal warrior. At this moment, the person stepped forward and came to a place less than 100 meters away from Nietan. He stood there, and his eyes under the ghost mask flashed with a cold light. He said coldly, Did you kill junior brother Qing Chi? So what? Nietan was stunned for a moment, and then nodded with a smile. His posture was extremely provocative. This person addressed Qing Chi as junior brother. It seemed that he was also a disciple of the Ghost King Palace Lord. Looking at his aura, his combat power was even more terrifying than Qing Chi's. If that's the case, then you will pay with your life for junior brother Qing Chi. The man's eyes trembled slightly as he spoke coldly. His voice was filled with extreme coldness and overbearingness. Nietan looked at the person and seemed to notice something. He immediately used his divine sense to cover the person. His face couldn't help but change, and he exclaimed in his heart, What a terrifying sword intent. He found that there was an extremely terrifying sword intent surging in the body of the ghost mask warrior. The aura was very terrifying, even more terrifying than Ouyang Lingxia's. This is... At the same time, Fat Cat's voice also sounded. She took a deep breath and said with a trembling voice, The evil woman's sword seal. The evil woman's sword seal? Nietan suddenly froze and immediately realized that the person in front of him was from the Ji family, one of the three evils families. The three evil sword seals were the flowing evil sword seal, the 9 evil sword seal, and the evil woman sword seal. Nietan had seen the flowing evil sword seal and the 9 evil sword seal, but he had never seen the evil woman sword seal. Nietan, you must be careful. This person's laws of the sword have reached sword essence, but the evil woman's sword seal is extremely terrifying. His true battle prowess is definitely on par with early overgods. Fat Cat was much calmer now. She warned Nietion sternly. Yes. Nietion nodded slightly, and his eyes became firm. This G-clan swordsman's strength was at the peak of the high god stage. His sword cultivation had reached the sword essence realm. Coupled with the evil woman's sword seal, his battle prowess was unimaginable. This person was a member of G family and was also the disciple of Ghost King Palace Master. This undoubtedly proved that Ghost King Palace Master was a member of G family. Nietion's guess was right. The person in front of him was a member of the Sanxi clan, G clan. His name was Ji Wushang. Young lad, your strength is indeed not bad. You were able to defeat Ouyang Lingxia. At this moment, Ji Wushang's cold eyes trembled slightly, and then revealed a deep viciousness. He said coldly, "Unfortunately, your current opponent is me. I'll take your life with one strike." Nietion had witnessed the entire battle between Ouyang Lingxia and Nietion. He had to admit that Nietion's strength had indeed surprised him, but he didn't take Nietion seriously because of that. He was confident that if he encountered an opponent like Ouyang Lingxia, he could kill him with one strike. As for Nietion, he was also confident that he could kill him with one strike. Is that so? Nietion's face darkened slightly, but the corner of his mouth curled into a disdainful smile. Ouyang Lingxia had said the same thing before, but in the end, he was defeated by Nietion. If Ouyang Fu hadn't arrived in time, he would have died in Nietion's hands. Nietion knew that Ji Wushang was stronger than Ouyang Lingxia, but he, Nietion, wasn't a pushover. Kill! Ji Wushang sensed the disdain in Nietion's eyes and couldn't help but roar in anger. His figure moved, and the primordial spiritual sword suddenly stabbed out. In the next moment, a strange scene happened. Several sword shadows appeared in the void, as if they had appeared at the same time, and they all rushed toward Nietion. Such incredible speed! Nietion was taken aback as he exclaimed inwardly. Ji Wushang's sword left several sword shadows in the air. It wasn't a lot of sword shadows, but a single sword shadow that was extremely fast. Nietion had only seen such a fast speed from one person before, and that was Luo Zian. However, Luo Zian relied on the Thousand Clouds barrier to change the flow of time, while Ji Wushang relied on nothing but pure speed to achieve such a fast speed. This was an essential difference. Nietion didn't expect Ji Wushang to be so fast. In a hurry, he struck out with his sword and activated the extreme wind firmament armor. Boom! In midair, the two sword shadows collided, and one of the sword shadows shattered. Then, a murderous sword intent came crashing down on Nietion. Bang! The sword intent fell, and with a muffled sound, the extreme wind firmament armor on Nietion's body shattered, and he was sent flying like a kite with a broken string, leaving a bloody trail in the air. This! The crowd couldn't help but gasp when they saw this scene, and their eyes trembled. Everyone saw how terrifying Nietion was, but he couldn't even take one sword strike from Ji Wushang. This was too outrageous. Nietion. In the spectator stands, Feng Biyu and Mo Yanwei couldn't help but exclaim in unison when they saw Nietion being sent flying by a sword strike. Ji Wushang looked at the bloody trail in the air, and the corner of his mouth twitched. He spoke in a cold tone, full of arrogance. However, before the sound of his voice faded, the blood in the air abruptly stopped, following which a pair of 100-meter-long astral soul wings unfurled, and Nietion's body stabilized as he hovered in midair. Right now, Nietion was covered in blood, looking extremely terrifying. However, the severity of his aura didn't decrease at all. He let out a long breath and spat out a mouthful of dirty blood. He smiled bitterly. The evil woman's sword seal is truly terrifying. The sword strike just now was too fast, and Nietion couldn't react in time. He could only act hastily. Fortunately, he activated the extreme wind firmament armor, which helped him block the majority of the sword intense impact. Coupled with his powerful martial physique, which was comparable to a lord god, he was able to withstand this fatal strike. Yet Tion's body shook, and the blood on his body was cleansed. His sword aura surged around him, and his battle intent surged. Ji Wuxiang was a good opponent, and yet Tian liked powerful and arrogant opponents like him. Ji Wuxiang couldn't help but be astonished when he saw that Niet Tian was still alive. Moreover, his aura was steady and imposing. The sword strike just now was extremely powerful, enough to heavily injure an early overgod. Niet Tian was only a late mid-god, so how could he withstand it? The crowd was stunned. Only now did they return to their senses, and their eyes immediately burned with passion. Niet Tian's strength was strange. It would be unbelievable if Ji Wuxiang really killed him in a single strike. Chapter 1677. Above the stage, Niet Tian didn't hesitate to unleash the 3 forbidden runes. His aura sword. This rune again. The crowd was startled. This was Niet Tian's 3rd time using the power of the forbidden runes. This time, Niet Tian activated the 3 forbidden talismans at the same time, and his strength began to skyrocket. What kind of power is this? It can actually increase my strength in an instant? Ji Wuxiang had seen Niet Tian's talisman power before, so when he saw it again, his eyes couldn't help but tremble. Is there a need for you to know? Yeah, Tianling coldly replied. His body was shrouded by the runes, and his eyes became sharp. Arrogant. Ji Wuxiang let out a bellow and actually launched an attack. The 7 shadows of invincibility thrust out, creating a vortex of sword intent that rapidly expanded and pressed down on Niet Tian. Ji Wuxiang sensed that Niet Tian's strength was rapidly increasing, so he wanted to make a move before Niet Tian's strength reached its peak. Niet Tian's expression sank as he sensed the terrifying pressure from the sword vortex. The forbidden runes around his body surged as he charged toward the sword vortex. Rumble! In the next second, the sword vortex slammed into the forbidden runes, causing an endless force to explode and wreak havoc in the air. At this moment, Niet Tian suddenly felt a terrifying force pressing down on him, as if it wanted to tear his body apart. In the blink of an eye, pain spread throughout his body. Niet Tian could feel the violent force attacking his body. The pain was unbearable, and he couldn't help but scream. Fool! Ji Wuxiang couldn't help but laugh at this scene. The sword vortex is condensed from the power of the evil woman's sword seal. The power contained inside is unimaginable. Trying to resist the evil woman's sword seal with mere runes is simply courting death. The evil woman's sword seal could not only increase the power of Ji Wuxiang's sword intent, but it also had a terrifying devouring power that could devour other sword intents. This devouring ability was extremely terrifying, and it was a devastating blow to other swordsmen. Just think about it. If 2 evenly matched people, and one of them could directly devour the other's strength, how abnormal would that be? The power of the evil woman's sword seal surged into Niet Tian's body. He suddenly felt a terrifying force attacking his martial body, wanting to devour all the sword intent in his body. Niet Tian endured the pain, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. He wanted to channel the dragon vein to force the power of the evil woman's sword imprint out of his body. But the more he did this, the more violent the power of the evil woman's sword seal became. The sword intent in his body was rapidly being devoured. Niet Tian felt like he was being bitten by thousands of ants, and the strength in his body was flowing out uncontrollably. The evil woman's sword seal was extremely terrifying. It was actually eating away at the forbidden runes in Niet Tian's body. But at this time, Niet Tian suddenly sensed that the forbidden art runes became berserk. They were actually frenziedly absorbing the power of the dragon vein seal. Sensing this, Niet Tian couldn't help but be startled, and his expression couldn't help but stiffen. Fat Cat once said that the forbidden art runes were a very strange kind of divine power that could absorb the power of the dragon vein seal. In the end, the most likely outcome was that the power of the dragon vein seal would be completely absorbed by the forbidden art runes, and the rune's potential would be unleashed to the extreme. as the forbidden art runes crazily absorbed the power of the dragon vein seal. Nietian felt its aura slowly becoming stronger. But this process was extremely painful. Nietian felt like his entire body was about to be torn apart, and his expression became ferocious. Stinking brat, enjoy this moment. Ji Wuxiang couldn't help but laugh when he saw Nietian enduring the pain. This battle was already within his grasp. But his laughter didn't last long before it abruptly stopped. Suddenly, he saw a strange scene in midair. The black forbidden art runes suddenly became berserk, like maggots in a bone. They continuously seeped into the whirlpool of sword intent. The dragon-shaped runes continuously surged and immediately began to nibble away at the power within the whirlpool of sword intent. How is this possible? Ji Wuxiang suddenly sensed that something was wrong and exclaimed, his face turning deathly pale. The evil woman's sword seal could devour other sword intents, but at this moment, it was actually being devoured by the strange forbidden art runes. At the same time, Nietian felt the forbidden art runes around him become berserk, instantly devouring the power of the evil woman's sword seal that had seeped into his body. Nietian was taken aback by the sudden turn of events, and his face was filled with astonishment. The forbidden art runes have become stronger. At the same time, Fat Cat exclaimed with great excitement. They really have become stronger. Nietian couldn't help but exclaim after sensing for a moment. In the next moment, Nietian immediately understood everything. The invasion of the evil woman's sword seal wanted to devour the forbidden art runes, forcing them to crazily absorb the power of the dragon vein seal. After the forbidden art runes became stronger, they directly countered the power of the evil woman's sword shadow. Before, Nietian's forbidden art runes were high-grade yellow rank, but now they had become low-grade mystic rank. Although it was only a minor increase, the aura of the forbidden art runes had a qualitative change. Inside the space, the forbidden art runes began to crazily absorb the power within the whirlpool of sword intent, directly transforming it into Nietian's power. What a terrifying forbidden art runes! Nietian's expression returned to normal, but his eyes were trembling. Earlier, he had used the dragon rune forbidden art to absorb the bloodline power within the godhead. Now, all three forbidden art runes were activated at the same time to absorb the power of the whirlpool of sword intent. The whirlpool of sword intent was formed by the evil woman's sword seal, and the evil woman's sword seal was a type of bloodline power. This is impossible. After a dozen or so seconds, Ji Wuxiang suddenly reacted and screamed. He wanted to retract the whirlpool of sword intent, but it was too late. The whirlpool had already been devoured by the forbidden art runes. At the same time, Nietian's aura also rose to the peak. The aura around him was as vast as the mountains and as vast as the sea, extremely terrifying. At this moment, Nietian slightly raised his palm, and a ball of golden light appeared in the center of his palm, surging with extremely mysterious power. Nietian was stunned, unable to react for a moment. Sovereign's loss. The little fat cat let out a strange cry, incomparably overjoyed. The power surging in Nietian's palm was the power of the Overgod's law. The forbidden art rune's level increased, allowing Nietian to instantly reach the Overgod's power. What a terrifying power! Nietian couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air when he felt the light in his palm. He finally understood why Overgods were so terrifying. It was because of the power of the Overgod's law. Ji Wuxiang also noticed the golden light in Nietian's palm. His eyes trembled violently, and he was so shocked that he couldn't speak. Chapter 1678. Nietian's cold voice fell as his killing intent enveloped Ji Wuxiang. At this moment, Nietian was like a sharp sword standing between heaven and earth. It was so sharp that it seemed like it could tear the heaven and earth apart. Ji Wuxiang sensed Nietian's killing intent. His eyes couldn't help but tremble. He was so shocked that he couldn't say anything. He had never imagined that the battle would turn out like this. He used the evil woman's sword seal, but it helped Nietian instead. High divine sword formation, kill. Niet Tianling shouted. His body was filled with endless battle intent. He took a step forward, and his sword intent surged out. The sword intent fused with the sword formation, causing the entire heaven and earth to tremble violently. Ji Wuxiang sensed Niet Tian's aura. His eyes trembled violently and revealed an unconcealable fear. However, at this time, he had no way to retreat. He could only fight to the death. At this time, the crowd looked at Niet Tian. The latter was like a dazzling giant sword that spanned between heaven and earth. A terrifying sword aura spread in the void. It was hard to imagine that such a terrifying sword aura actually came from Niet Tian, a swordsman with the strength of a mid-god. At this time, Ji Wuxiang's figure moved first. He was very smart and wanted to seize the opportunity to attack first. Ji Wuxiang's body was surrounded by a terrifying sword intent vortex. It was the power of the evil woman's sword seal. He knew that the next sword attack would determine life and death, so he decided to go all out and stake everything on this one attack. Peerless seven shadows, slash. Ji Wuxiang's mouth trembled as he spat out a cold voice. Then, he slashed down with his sword. Suddenly, endless sword intent bloomed. The sword light engulfed the sky. In the sky, a terrifying sword shadow that resembled a collapsing mountain slashed down towards Niet Tian. Almost at the same time, Niet Tian's figure also moved. The heavenly sword slash suddenly pierced through the sky. The high divine sword formation's power instantly gathered on the tip of the sword. The violent sword energy shot out 10,000 meters. The power of this sword seemed to be able to destroy the sky. Boom! Before the two extremely terrifying sword images had even collided in the air, their powerful auras had already collided. A terrifying explosion sounded in the air, and even the power of the world began to tremble. What two terrifying people! Seeing the two huge swords in the air, the crowd couldn't help but cry out. The battle between Niet Tian and Ji Wuxiang was more exciting than people had imagined. Bang! Right at this moment, the two sky-splitting swords finally collided with each other. The sound of metal colliding rang out in the void, piercing through the clouds and cracking rocks as thunder rumbled through the nine heavens. The eyes of the crowd suddenly froze at this moment. It was as if time and space had stopped. The shock in their hearts was revealed on their faces. Puff, puff, puff. Horrible sounds could be heard continuously. The two giant swords were trying to devour each other, as if they were going to tear each other apart. After a few seconds, the clash between the two giant swords finally came to an end. It was clear that Niet Tian's sword was superior. In the next moment, a terrifying sword shadow came crashing down on Ji Wuxiang. No! Feeling the cold, killing intent approaching, Ji Wuxiang screamed in a shrill voice. He never dreamed that the result of this battle would be like this. Don't kill him. At this moment, a low voice suddenly sounded in the sky, and then a phantom figure appeared, looking at Niet Tian with cold and decisive eyes. Huh? When Niet Tian heard this voice, he couldn't help but frown. At the same time, he shouted in his heart, Ghost King Palace Master, you appeared at the right time. The phantom figure that suddenly appeared was none other than the Ghost King Palace Master's sole doppelganger. Niet Tian didn't expect that the Ghost King Palace Master still hadn't left. You don't want me to kill him, so I'll kill him. Niet Tian suddenly raised his head, looking provocatively at the Ghost King Palace Master, and said cold. Then, not only did he not withdraw his killing sword, but he even more violently pressed down on Ji Wuxiang. Don't you dare! The Ghost King Palace Master's face changed abruptly. With a growl, boundless power radiated from his body, and he directly slammed his palm at Niet Tian. Ghost King Palace Master, you want to stop me with a mere soul doppelganger? What a joke! Niet Tianling sneered, and then swung his sword, directly shattering the Ghost King Palace Master's palm. Boom! At the same time, the killing sword also fell. Ji Wuxiang didn't even have time to scream before he was reduced to ashes. Niet Tian was currently an early overgod, and his sword intent contained the power of Overgod's laws. With his full strength, he directly destroyed Ji Wuxiang's godhead. The moment the sword's shadow fell, time and space seemed to freeze. Countless eyes stared at the sky blankly. No words could express the shock in their hearts. He's finally dead. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth couldn't help but curl up when he felt Ji Wuxiang's aura dissipate completely. You didn't die in vain. Killing Ji Wuxiang in a domineering manner, Nie Tian had a big plan in mind. Not only did the Ghost King Palace Master's sudden appearance not frighten him, but it also made him very happy. From the Ghost King Palace Master's reaction, he cared a lot about Ji Wuxiang. It was precisely because of this that Nie Tian wanted to kill Ji Wuxiang. He wanted to use Ji Wuxiang's death to anger the Ghost King Palace Master. The scene was deathly silent. All eyes were focused on Nie Tian, and only a few people looked at the Ghost King Palace Master. Most people didn't know the Ghost King Palace Master, thinking he was just a secret guard of the Ghost King Palace. Wuxiang. Suddenly, the Ghost King Palace Master roared. His illusory figure trembled as if he would disappear at any time. Ji Wuxiang was not only the Ghost King Palace Master's disciple, but also the Ghost King Palace Master's son. How could the Ghost King Palace Master not be angry after witnessing his son's tragic death? This is bad. On the other side, Gue Shanquan saw the furious Ghost King Palace Master and screamed at his heart. His scarred face turned deathly pale. In fact, when Ji Wuxiang appeared, he sensed that something big was going to happen. He didn't expect that Ji Wuxiang would die in the hands of Nie Tian. The Ghost King Palace Master had many sons, but Ji Wuxiang was his most beloved son. Watching his beloved son being killed, the pain in the Ghost King Palace Master's heart could be imagined. At this time, more than a dozen ghost-faced martial artists appeared behind the Ghost King Palace Master. They were the secret guards lurking in the dark. These secret guards, of course, knew the identity of the Ghost King Palace Master. As long as the latter gave the order, they would inevitably attack and kill Nie Tian. Why do you want to kill him? But at this time, the Ghost King Palace Master inexplicably calmed down. A pair of cold eyes stared at Nie Tian and asked in a deep voice, "You want to save him, so I want to kill him," Nie Tianling said coldly, his eyes extremely provocative. The battle between Ji Wuxiang and Nie Tian was originally a moment of life and death. If Nie Tian's strength was not enough, the one who died would be him. "You?" The Ghost King Palace Master's eyes trembled violently, and he said in a deep voice, "Do you know who you were talking to?" The Ghost King Palace Master was the pinnacle expert of the Sunluo Ghost Domain. No one had ever dared to talk to him like this. "Of course I know. I'm talking to a soul avatar who overestimates his own strength." Nie Tian laughed. His eyes became more fierce, and his attitude became more provocative. Seeing Nie Tian's attitude, Gue Shanquan's face turned green. Chapter 1679. Gue Shanquan's expression was extremely ugly. He did not know how the Ghost King Palace Master would react next. The Ghost King Palace Master's eyes were gloomy as he stared at Nie Tian. However, he was very calm and did not move at all. The dark guards behind him did not dare to move either. They just stared cold at Nie Tian. In the stands, Feng Biyu and Mo Yanwei were also extremely nervous, ready to fight at any time. As long as the Ghost King Palace Master made any strange movements, there would be a fierce battle. "Nie Tian, I'll remember you." Unexpectedly, the Ghost King Palace Master spoke cold. Although the killing intent in his eyes was very strong, he did not attack. After all, he was only a soul clone and could not fight against Nie Tian. Moreover, with Nie Tian's current battle strength, even a dozen Dark Guards might not be Nie Tian's opponent at the same time. It should be known that Nie Tian's current strength was at the early stage of the Overgod realm. The Ghost King Palace Master was also very curious about the runes released from Nie Tian's body. How could it be so terrifying? On the other hand, the Ghost King Palace Master did not want to expose his identity. After all, he was the Palace Master and the Ghost King Arena was organized by him. There was nothing wrong with Nie Tian killing Ji Wuxiang. If the Ghost King Palace Master attacked at this time, he would be breaking his own rules, which would be detrimental to the Ghost King Palace's reputation. Of course, this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that the Ghost King Palace Master could not stop Nietian at all. Ghost King Palace Master, I know you are very angry. If you want to take revenge or continue to trade with me, let's meet in the dark forest one day later. What do you think? Nietian smiled faintly. The corners of his mouth raised into a strange arc and directly sent a voice transmission to the Ghost King Palace Master. Okay, it's a deal. The Ghost King Palace Master did not have any doubts and replied sternly. Palace Master Ghost King, let me remind you out of good intentions. If you really want to take revenge, a mere soul clone is far from enough. Nietian smiled again. The provocation in his eyes was very strong. I don't need you to tell me what to do. See you in the dark forest one day later. The Ghost King Palace Master sneered, and then his figure moved, and his avatar disappeared directly. When Nietian saw that the Ghost King Palace Lord had left, the corner of his mouth raised slightly. He secretly breathed a sigh of relief, and the aura around his body dissipated. Although the power of the three forbidden techniques was terrifying, they could not last for long. After all, Nietian's forbidden technique runes were of a very low level. Moreover, when the forbidden technique rune was activated, it also put a lot of pressure on his martial body. The aura around him dissipated, and Nietian's strength dropped rapidly. But in the next moment, he let out a cry of surprise. He suddenly discovered that his strength had dropped to the pinnacle of the mid-deity stage. It seems like the forbidden technique rune absorbed the power of the evil woman's sword seal, allowing my strength to increase again. Nietian immediately reacted and faintly smiled. Everyone retreat. At this time, Gue Shanchuan's figure appeared, indicating for the dark guards to retreat. When the crowd saw this scene, their tense nerves relaxed, but they couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Congratulations, you have defeated a superior god ringmaster. Gue Shanquan looked at Nietian with shining eyes and said in a deep voice, but there was a trace of trembling in his eyes. When he first looked for Nietian, he did not expect that the latter could reach this step and defeat three superior god ringmasters. Gue Shanquan knew that Nietian had the divine demon original embryo, but he did not expect the latter's strength to be so terrifying. Can I now put forward 3 conditions to the Ghost King Palace Master? Nietian, of course, understood the meaning of Gue Shanquan and said directly, yes. Gue Shanquan nodded slightly, and his eyes flashed with an unconcealable heat. He wanted Nietian to state his conditions in front of everyone. Mr. Gue, please tell the Ghost King Palace Master that my first condition is the opposing blood pill formula. Nietian did not talk nonsense and said directly, good, I will definitely tell the Palace Master. Gue Shanquan was excited, and his body trembled a little. He then asked, what about the other 2 conditions? No one knew that the soul avatar that appeared just now was the Ghost King Palace Master, so Nietian and Gue Shanquan did not expose this matter. The other 2 conditions, I will personally tell the Ghost King Palace Master. Mr. Gue need not worry. Nietian smiled faintly. He believed that Gue Shanquan would also tell these words to the Ghost King Palace Master. Gue Shanquan was stunned for a moment, but he did not say anything. In any case, Nietian said what he wanted. As for the other 2 conditions, he did not care. Gue Shanquan was a little puzzled. Why did Nietian want to see the Ghost King Palace Master, and even specifically reminded the Ghost King Palace Master that he must go with his real body? He killed Ji Wushang and provoked the Ghost King Palace Master. Wasn't this courting death? Goodbye, Mr. Gay. Nietian did not stay any longer and was about to leave. Next, as long as he obtained the opposing blood pills recipe and gave it to Gue Shanquan in exchange for the 7-leaf agave orchid, the deal between the 2 would be complete. Gue Shanquan was not a good person, so Nietian did not want to have too much contact with him. Nietian and the others left the arena and directly went to the Mo family's courtyard. Although today's arena battle was very thrilling, it was a blessing in disguise for Nietian. Not only did his strength increase, but the grade of the forbidden technique rune also increased. The increase in the grade of the Forbidden Technique rune allowed Nye Tion's battle prowess to increase by leaps and bounds. He could use the 3 great Forbidden Techniques at the same time, so his strength could reach the early over-god level. The existence of the 3 great Forbidden Techniques had another benefit, which was that it could allow him to come into contact with higher realms as soon as possible, so his comprehension of the higher realms would be deeper. Just like now, although he only had the strength of a peak mid-god, he had some comprehension of the laws of overgods. This was very beneficial to the improvement of his realms in the future. After a while, Nye Tion and the others returned to the Mo family's courtyard. After returning to the courtyard, Nye Tion naturally went to check on Rainstorm first. He only relaxed after confirming that she was fine for now. Afterwards, Nye Tion went to the main hall. He had some things he wanted to verify with Mo Yuani. Nye Tion. Mo Yuani immediately stood up when he saw Nye Tion. His eyes could not help but tremble. He seemed very excited. He had already learned everything that happened in the arena from Mo Yanwei. Mo Yuani was very surprised that Nye Tion could defeat Ouyang Lingxia and Ji Wuxian. Mo Yuani was even more surprised when he sensed the change in Nye Tion's strength. His expression froze for quite a while. Mr. Mo Nye Tion smiled faintly. Then, everyone sat down. Mr. Mo, I have something to ask you. Nye Tion sat down and said bluntly. Yes. Mo Yuani nodded slightly. How much do you know about Ouyang Lingxia? Nye Tion had learned Ouyang Lingxia's name from Mo Yanwei. His eyes were slightly gloomy as he asked in a deep voice. Ouyang Fu's adopted son. Mo Yuani was stunned. He did not expect Nye Tion to suddenly ask about this person. He could not help but think for a while and said, this person is known as the #1 genius of the Ouyang family in 10,000 years. Moreover, he activated the 9 evil sword seal by himself. This shows how terrifying his talent in swordsmanship is. Chapter 1680. Nye Tion, do you think there's something wrong with Ouyang Lingxia? Mo Yuani's face darkened when he saw Nye Tion's unusual reaction. Mr. Mo, you are from the Sangxi family. In your opinion, what kind of person can open the tri-evil sword seal by himself? Nye Tion asked with a smile instead of answering Mo Yuani's question. Mo Yuani was stunned and fell into deep thought. The tri-evil sword seal is extremely difficult to open. Many genius swordsmen may not be able to do it even with the help of someone who has already opened the sword seal. After a long time, Mo Yuani calmed down and said in a deep voice, in the Sangxi family, all the swordsmen who can open the tri-evil sword seal by themselves are geniuses. Their talent in swordsmanship is unparalleled, and they will become great swordsmanship masters in the future. Nye Tion nodded and smiled. He continued to ask, Mr. Mo, what do you think of Ouyang Lingxia's talent in swordsmanship? Mo Yuani was stunned again and said, Ouyang Lingxia is so young, less than 1,000 years old, but he already has the strength of a late-stage high god, and his swordsmanship has reached the essence of the sword. His talent in swordsmanship is indeed amazing. Amazing? Ouyang Lingxia's talent in the art of the sword is indeed very high, but it's only amazing. He's almost 1,000 years old, but he's still stuck at the essence of sword. He's far from being the genius that Mr. Mo described him to be. Nye Tion laughed and said, Ouyang Lingxia's talent in the art of the sword is indeed outstanding. This? Mo Yuani was stunned and didn't know what to say. Genius swordsmen usually became famous at a young age. This was because the younger a warrior was, the greater his potential was. Many of those great swordsmanship masters had reached the pinnacle of swordsmanship before they were 1,000 years old. Ouyang Lingxia's talent in swordsmanship was not bad, but he was still far from being a genius. Mo Yihan, for example, was already a swordsman at the age of 10, while Ouyang Lingxia, who was nearly 1,000 years old, was only at the essence of the sword. In comparison, Ouyang Lingxia and Mo Yihan were worlds apart. Even Nye Tion, who was a swordsman without a powerful sword seal, was already a swordsman with a sword bone. His age was still much lower than Ouyang Lingxia's. Nye Tion, what are you trying to say? Mo Yanwei's face was dull. His eyes trembled as he asked in a deep voice. Nye Tian smiled and said, Ouyang Lingxia's talent in swordsmanship is not bad, but he is definitely not a genius. So what I want to say is that his 9 evil sword seal was not activated by himself. This, Mo Yuani and Mo Yanwei looked at each other and gasped at the same time. What Nye Tian said made sense. Thinking about it this way, with Ouyang Lingxia's talent in swordsmanship, it was indeed impossible for him to activate the 9 evil sword seal by himself. I have fought with Ouyang Lingxia before. Nye Tian smiled again and said, his 9 evil sword seal is very powerful, but it can't even defeat me, a swordsman in the swordbone realm. Is this the fighting power of a swordsman who activated the sword seal by himself? Mo Yuani and Mo Yanwei's faces darkened. They murmured, if Ouyang Lingxia's sword seal was not activated by himself, then who did it for him? Is this answer difficult? Nye Tian's mouth twitched, and he said, as far as you know, who has the ability to activate the 3 evil sword seal? Ghost King Palace Master. Mo Yuani and Mo Yanwei's faces changed, and they shouted at the same time. The two seemed to have thought of something at this moment. Their faces were full of shock, and they were speechless for a long time. Nye Tian smiled faintly. What he wanted to tell the Mo brothers was that Ouyang Lingxia's 9 evil sword seal was activated by the Ghost King Palace Master. Nye Tian, you mean that Ouyang Lingxia is the Ghost King Palace Master's man? Mo Yanwei reacted quickly. His face was pale as he said in a deep voice. Very likely. Nye Tian nodded slightly and said, when Ouyang Lingxia came here before, he strongly encouraged Ouyang Fu and the Ouyang family to attack. Then he appeared in the High God Arena. The strangest thing was that when Ouyang Fu appeared, he did not show joy. Instead, he showed a guilty conscience. So I guess that Ouyang Lingxia appeared in the arena to see the Ghost King Palace Master. Ghost King Palace Master. Mo Yuani and Mo Yanwei were stunned at the same time and exclaimed again. Mo Yanwei knew that Nye Tian had left for a while, but he did not know that he went to see the Ghost King Palace Master. Nye Tian nodded with a smile and told him everything that had happened. Finally, he said, based on all the suspicious points, I think Ouyang Lingxia is very likely to be a spy that the Ghost King Palace Master placed beside Ouyang Fu. Mo Yuani and Mo Yanwei's eyes trembled. They did not expect Nye Tian's thinking to be so meticulous that he could even deduce this point. After a long time, Mo Yuani completely calmed down, but his expression was not relaxed. Instead, it was very solemn. He said, Ouyang Fu lost his wife and son, and he dotes on Ouyang Lingxia very much. He treats him as his own and trusts him very much. What you said just now is just a deduction. Even if you tell Ouyang Fu, he will not believe you. Yes, I know this. Nye Tian nodded slightly. He had seen the way Ouyang Fu looked at Ouyang Lingxia before. It was absolute trust, without the slightest doubt. However, Nye Tian already had a plan in mind. He would definitely let Ouyang Fu see Ouyang Lingxia's true colors. Then, Nye Tian told Mo Yuani that Ouyang Fu would arrive soon. Previously at the arena, Nye Tian asked Ouyang Fu to snatch it in Mo Yuani's name. The latter would definitely not break the promise. Nye Tian, the person you have been waiting for is here. Just then, Fat Cat's voice was heard, laughing. Ouyang Fu is here. Nye Tian nodded with a smile, then stood up. In the small courtyard, a figure directly landed, and immediately the Mo family's secret guards were mobilized. Master Ouyang, you are here. Mo Yuani hurriedly walked out and signaled the secret guards to leave. Mo Yuani, why are you looking for me? Hurry up and say it. I don't have time to talk nonsense with you. Ouyang Fu's face was cold, and he said coldly, Mr. Ouyang, since you are here, why not have a good talk? Moreover, I have a big gift for you. Nye Tian took a step forward and said with a faint smile. Ouyang Fu glanced at Nye Tian, thought for a moment, and finally walked into the main hall. In the main hall, everyone sat down. Mo Yuani, what is it? Just say it. Ouyang Fu looked at Mo Yuani. He thought that the main character of this meeting was the latter. Mo Yuani smiled and couldn't help but look at Nie Tian. He also didn't know why Nie Tian invited Ouyang Fu. Mr. Ouyang, the real murderer who killed your wife and son. Have you found him? Nie Tian didn't waste time and asked directly. The Ghost King Palace Master's whereabouts are secretive. He has been hiding in the Ghost King Palace. I haven't seen him yet. Ouyang Fu said in a deep voice, his eyes surging with terrible anger. He had been around the Ghost King Palace for the past few days, waiting for the Ghost King Palace Master to come out, but unfortunately, there was no one. The Ouyang family's strength was limited. It was impossible for them to rush into the Ghost King Palace to find the Ghost King Palace Master. I have an appointment with the Ghost King Palace Master tomorrow in the Dark Forest. I think Master Ouyang will be very interested. Nie Tian smiled faintly. The corner of his mouth raised into a strange smile. You have an appointment with the Ghost King Palace Master. Before he finished speaking, Ouyang Fu, Mo Yuani, and Mo Yanwei's voices sounded at the same time. The shock in their hearts completely revealed on their faces. Chapter 1681. In the main hall of the Mo family's small courtyard, Mo Yuani and the others were stunned and stared at Nie Tian in disbelief. They didn't expect that Nie Tian would make an appointment with the Ghost King Palace Master. Little brother, is what you said true? Ouyang Fu reacted and looked at Nie Tian with a fiery gaze. Do I look like I'm lying? Nie Tian smiled faintly and looked at Ouyang Fu indifferently. As Ouyang Fu looked at Nie Tian and sensed the strong confidence in his eyes, his expression flickered. At this moment, Nie Tian gave him a feeling that he was unfathomable. Ouyang Fu couldn't believe that the person sitting in front of him was actually a martial artist in his 20s. Mr. Ouyang, if you want this big gift and want to see the Ghost King Palace Master, you have to listen to me. Nie Tian's eyes swept over Ouyang Fu and said lightly. Ouyang Fu's eyes trembled, and he couldn't help but frown. Being able to see the Ghost King Palace Master was indeed a big gift for Ouyang Fu, but it seemed difficult for him to listen to Nie Tian. Master Ouyang, Mr. Nie Tian doesn't have bad intentions towards you. I think you should trust him. At this time, Mo Yuani also spoke, his voice heavy. What do you want me to do? Ouyang Fu calmed down, his eyes became gloomy and cold. It's very simple. I just want you to hide and quietly watch a good show. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth raised into a strange smile as he said lightly. Ouyang Fu's face sank. He didn't know what Nie Tian wanted to do. Mr. Ouyang, don't worry. I don't have any bad intentions. I just want to save my friend. After pondering for a moment, Nie Tian said, I'll help you find out who killed your wife and son. In return, you have to help me restrain the Ghost King Palace Master. Restrain the Ghost King Palace Master? Ouyang Fu was stunned. He couldn't understand what Nie Tian was talking about. Nie Tian thought for a moment and decided not to hide it anymore. He directly told her his plan. Nie Tian's meeting with the Ghost King Palace Lord was actually to lure the tiger away from the mountain, to make the Ghost King Palace Lord leave. He would help Ouyang Fu find out what happened in the past, and use Ouyang Fu to restrain the Ghost King Palace Lord. Then, Nie Tian would go to the Ghost King Palace to rescue Rui Qinyu and the others. Nie Tian believed that other than the Ghost King Palace Lord, no one else in the Ghost King Palace was Feng Buyu's opponent. After listening to Nie Tian's plan, Ouyang Fu, Mo Yuani, and the others were stunned. For a moment, they didn't know what to say. Nie Tian's plan completely treated Ouyang Fu as a chess piece. As long as you can find out the truth, I'm willing to help you stall the Ghost King Palace Master. After a long time, Ouyang Fu nodded solemnly, unexpectedly agreeing to Nie Tian's request. All right, it's a deal. Nie Tian smiled faintly as a strange light flashed in his eyes. Following that, Nie Tian and the others discussed for a while and came up with a detailed plan. Then, Nie Tian came to the room where Feng Buyu was. In this rescue plan, Ouyang Fu was the key figure, but Feng Buyu was equally important. Ouyang Fu was there to stall the Ghost King Palace Lord, while Feng Buyu was there to break into the Ghost King Palace with Nie Tian. You want to go to the Ghost King Palace to save people. Inside the room, after listening to Nie Tian's plan, Feng Buyu couldn't help but let out a strange cry and said with a surprised expression, The Ghost King Palace is heavily guarded. Even if the Ghost King Palace Master isn't here, there are still countless experts guarding the place. It's impossible for you to save them all by yourself. It's not my strength alone, it's the two of us. Tian looked at Feng Buyu and said lightly, "The two of us?" Feng Buyu suddenly froze and cried out again. "Yes." Tian nodded heavily and said, "I've made a deal with Temple Lord Sun Luo. You and I will go to the Ghost King Palace to save people. Consider it as him helping me save people. What do you think?" Feng Buyu was stunned and couldn't speak for a while. "Tian, are you sure you want to force your way into the Ghost King Palace?" After a while, Feng Buyu calmed down a lot and spoke with a serious expression. "Maybe we can wait for Chie to come. With him, the three of us can go to the Ghost King Palace." "It's too late." Tian shook his head and said, "I'm going to see the Ghost King Palace Lord tomorrow. Can Temple Lord Sun Luo come here before tomorrow?" Feng Buyu's face stiffened and couldn't say anything. Besides, even if the sect master of the Sun Luo 7 Knights were here, he probably wouldn't be willing to go to the Ghost King Palace with me. Tian laughed. Based on his understanding of the Sun Luo 7 Knights, he didn't think the sect master would go to the Ghost King Palace with me. "All right, I, Feng Buyu, will risk my life to accompany you this time." Feng Buyu smiled bitterly, but his eyes were much more determined. These days, he had been with Tian and saw the latter's monstrous talent. If Tian went to the Ghost King Palace alone, he would definitely die. If Feng Buyu came with him, there was still a chance. "Thank you." Tian nodded and turned to leave. Back in his room, Tian let out a long sigh of relief, and his expression softened. Ouyang Fu and Feng Buyu's side was no longer a problem. Next was the Ghost King Palace Lord. Tomorrow's appointment. The Ghost King Palace Lord won't miss it, right? Tian murmured, but his eyes were filled with worry. If the Ghost King Palace Lord didn't show up tomorrow, or if another avatar went, it would be terrible. If the Ghost King Palace Lord was in the Ghost King Palace, Tian and Feng Buyu wouldn't stand a chance. "Tian, have you really thought it through?" At this time, Fat Cat appeared, also looking very worried. Tian's plan this time was indeed very dangerous. There were too many uncertain factors. And even if everything went according to his plan, with just him and Feng Buyu, they might not be able to save the people. The Ghost King City's arena had a killing array that could kill a supreme god. How could there not be a killing array in the Ghost King Palace? Tian wanted to force his way into the Ghost King Palace to save the people. It was too risky. "I have no other choice. I have to fight," Tian said in a low voice, his face cold. Rui Jiansu and Tawny's child was about to be born, and yet Tian couldn't wait any longer. The longer Rui Qinyu and the others stayed in the Ghost King Palace, the more dangerous it would be. "Okay." Fat Cat nodded slightly. It seemed that they had a fight. Tian didn't waste the remaining time. He used it to cultivate. His current strength was at the peak of the middle deity. There were already signs of him breaking through to the upper deity. If nothing went wrong, in a few months, Tian would definitely break through to the upper deity. The next day, Tian, Feng Buyu, and Mo Yanwei came to the Dark Forest together. After a while, Ouyang Fu also appeared. "Fat, let's start." Tian smiled and said lightly. Fat Cat's figure appeared. He immediately set up a small formation, perfectly hiding in the space. "You guys enter the formation." Fat Cat finished the formation and said to Ouyang Fu and the others. This formation was a concealment formation. It could help Ouyang Fu and the others hide perfectly. Ouyang Fu and the others were stunned for a while. Then they immediately stepped into the formation and disappeared. Tian nodded slightly. He activated the holographic divine sigil and felt relieved when he didn't sense the aura of Ouyang Fu and the others. Fat Cat's formation was indeed powerful. It could even hide a powerhouse like Ouyang Fu perfectly. Chapter 1682. In the dark forest at the edge of the Sun Luo ghost domain, Tian stood in the dense forest, waiting quietly. "He's here." At this moment, Fat Cat's voice sounded. Then the space trembled slightly. A figure appeared. A familiar ghost mask appeared in midair. Ghost King Palace Master. Tian saw the ghost mask. His eyes couldn't help but tremble, and he exclaimed in his heart. The ghost mask martial artist in front of him was exactly the same as the Ghost King Palace Master he saw before, but his aura was much stronger. This is the body of the Ghost King Palace Master, Fat Cat said with certainty. Tian nodded slightly, then looked at the Ghost King Palace Master and said, Ghost King Palace Master, you really came. The Ghost King Palace Master's figure moved and directly landed in a place only tens of meters away from Tian. Feeling the aura of the Ghost King Palace Master at such a close distance, Tian felt that the person standing in front of him was not a person, but a towering mountain. The aura of the Ghost King Palace Master was even stronger than Sun Luo, 7 Nights. There was no doubt that the Ghost King Palace Master's strength had reached the highest realm. Tian. The ghost mask on the Ghost King Palace Master's face trembled. A pair of abyss-like eyes stared at Tian, and a low voice sounded. This king didn't expect you to be so courageous, to come alone. Are you not afraid that this king will kill you directly? The Ghost King Palace Master sensed the surroundings, very sure that there was no one around, only Tian. He was surprised that Tian dared to meet him alone. One must know that with the Ghost King Palace Master's strength, he could kill Tian in seconds. Ghost King Palace Master, I have too many things you want to know, so you won't kill me easily. Tian laughed, but very indifferent, without the slightest fear. The Ghost King Palace Master's eyes sank. Staring closely at Tian, he could see that Tian's calmness was not fake, but genuine indifference. It was hard to imagine that a medium god martial artist could remain calm in the face of a paramount god martial artist. What kind of mental fortitude was that? Are you that confident? The Ghost King Palace Master spoke in a deep and cold voice. In my eyes, you are nothing but an ant. As long as I want to, I can trample you to death at any time. Really? Tian chuckled and said, If you kill me, you will never know what the power of the runes in my body is. The Ghost King Palace Master's eyes turned cold. He did not expect Tian to be so shrewd. The reason why he did not kill Tian directly was that he wanted the rune power in Tian's body. He had personally watched as Tian, after activating his runes, rose in power from the god level to the sovereign level. What was even stranger was that this rune did not seem to have any negative effects. Otherwise, Tian would not be able to stand here alive and kicking. The Ghost King Palace Master felt that if he could obtain this rune and fully activate it, his power would definitely rise to the peak of the paramount god level. Because of this, he did not kill Tian. The forbidden rune was too attractive to him. The Ghost King Palace Master came to see Tian in person not only for revenge, but also for the forbidden rune. Tian also knew this, so he dared to stand in front of the Ghost King Palace Master indifferently. Since you know what I want, then tell me the secret of the rune. Maybe I will spare your life. The Ghost King Palace Master said cold, his eyes revealing a murderous intent. Ghost King Palace Master, I have defeated 3 arena masters. According to the rules of the Ghost King Arena, I can make 3 requests. Tian felt the Ghost King Palace Master's murderous intent, but he said calmly, Why don't we settle this first, then talk about the rune? Huh? The Ghost King Palace Master was slightly taken aback. Then he laughed and said, Don't you want the opposing blood pills recipe? I can give it to you. As for the other 2 conditions, I can also satisfy you, say it. Tian smiled and said, Ghost King Palace Master, my other 2 conditions are very simple. I just want to ask you 2 questions. Ask. The Ghost King Palace Master's eyes were cold and murderous. Tian suddenly looked up. His eyes became cold and said, The first question, are you from the Sanxi family, Ji family? The Ghost King Palace Master heard Tian's words. His eyes couldn't help but tremble, obviously a trace of nervousness. Then there was a long silence. No one spoke. Why? Is this question difficult? Tian saw the Ghost King Palace Master's reaction. He already had an answer in his heart. Yes. Suddenly, the Ghost King Palace Master spoke cold. The murderous intent in his eyes became stronger. As expected, The corner of Nietion's mouth slightly curled up, secretly smiling in his heart. His guess was right. The Ghost King Palace Master really was from the Ji family. The second question, the Sangxi family, Ouyang family master, Ouyang Fu's wife and child. Who killed them? Nietion's eyes flickered, asking again. The Ghost King Palace Master's eyes suddenly narrowed. The way he looked at Nietion changed. Stinking brat, who are you? The next moment, the Ghost King Palace Master reacted. He didn't answer Nietion's question, but growled cold. His eyes became cold and murderous. Nietion first pointed out his identity, then mentioned Ouyang Fu. This made the Ghost King Palace Master wary of him. Who is Nietion? How did he know so many things? Ghost King Palace Master, it seems that the Ouyang family master's wife and child were really killed by you. Nietion saw the Ghost King Palace Master's reaction. He couldn't help but sneer. Lord Palace Master really has a good plan. Killing the Ouyang family master's wife and child, then framing the Mo family, causing the Ouyang family and Mo family to fight to the death. In this way, the final beneficiary is your Ji family. Amazing, Nietion said solemnly, his eyes fixed on the Ghost King Palace Master. Nietion, many people die at a young age without knowing why because they know too much. The Ghost King Palace Master's eyes trembled. His whole body released a crazy murderous intent, revealing his murderous intent. He really didn't expect Nietion to know so many things. If that's the case, then you can't keep your life. The Ghost King Palace Master took a step forward. The aura around him rumbled, like a 10,000 zhang tsunami spreading towards Nietion. Killed to silence the witness? Nietion smiled faintly, then frowned and said in a loud voice, Mr. Ouyang, are you satisfied with this big show? Ghost King Palace Master, I'll tear you apart. Just as his voice fell, a furious voice suddenly sounded in the void, followed by a surging sword intent whistling out, directly crushing the Ghost King Palace Master's aura. The next moment, a figure appeared in front of Nietion. It was Ouyang Fu, and behind Ouyang Fu, the figures of Feng Buyu and Mo Yanwei also appeared. Ouyang Fu. The Ghost King Palace Master saw the face of the person in front of him. He couldn't help but scream. He never thought that Ouyang Fu would suddenly appear. Chapter 1683. The Ghost King Palace Lord suddenly understood everything. His anger soared to the heavens, his whole body trembling, feeling as if he was being bitten by countless little insects, extremely uncomfortable. How could he have ever imagined that he, the dignified Palace Lord, would be fooled by an ant like this? You were too cooperative, Ghost King. You can't blame me for that. Nietion smiled faintly. Then, he looked at Ouyang Fu and Mo Yanwei and said in a deep voice, I'm done here. The rest is up to you too. You killed my wife and son, Ghost King. I'll kill you. Ouyang Fu's sword will surged, making him look like an enormous sword, a sword of slaughter that seemed capable of ripping apart heaven and earth. Ouyang Fu was a peak over God, and his cultivation of the sword had reached the level of selflessness. That was more than enough to keep the Palace Lord occupied. Although the Palace Lord was an early paramount god, his cultivation of the sword was only at the quintessence of the sword, which made him even weaker than Ouyang Fu. Nietion was a bit confused. If the Palace Lord was from the Ji clan, then his cultivation of the sword couldn't possibly be lower than that. Ouyang Fu was enraged like a wild beast, directly thrusting his sword towards the Ghost King Palace Lord. The Palace Lord was stunned, but didn't dare to be careless. A broken sword appeared in his hand, and sword will surged out to meet Ouyang Fu. A damaged sword of a nascent spirit. When Nietion saw the broken sword in the Ghost King Palace Master's hand, he immediately realized that the latter's origin spirit had been injured, so it was incomplete. This was the reason why his sword Dao realm was not high. In his rage, Ouyang Fu disregarded everything and fought with no regard for his life, forcing the Ghost King Palace Master to retreat. Mr. Mo, I'll leave this to you. Nietion didn't waste any time. After saying a few words to Mo Yanwei, he motioned for Feng Buyu to leave. Without hesitation, The two of them headed toward the Ghost King Palace. Nietian had no idea how long Ouyang Fu would be able to keep the Palace Lord occupied, so he had to hurry. Damnation! The Ghost King Palace Lord saw Nietian and Feng Biu leaving in the direction of the Ghost King Palace, and immediately understood. He cursed in his heart, but there was nothing he could do. Nietian and Feng Biu moved like lightning and soon arrived outside a dark palace. Nietian, this is the Ghost King Palace. Feng Biu looked at the dark palace in front of him and said in a deep voice. Nietian frowned slightly. He could vaguely feel that the Ghost King Palace was enveloped by a strange aura. It was extremely terrifying, but at this time, he didn't have time to think too much. Saving people was more important. Let's go, Nietian bellowed. His figure moved and directly flew towards the Ghost King Palace. The walls of the Ghost King Palace were a few hundred meters tall, but to Nietian and Silent Wind, it was no obstacle at all. Who is it? Just as Nietian and Feng Biu's silhouettes appeared on top of the city walls, a low voice rang out from the void. Following which, a black-robed figure wearing a strange devil mask appeared. This person was none other than a guard from the Ghost King Palace. Die! Nietian glanced at the guard. The latter was an early-stage high god. He let out a low roar and thrust his sword forward. The guard didn't even have time to react before he was killed on the spot. But in the next moment, dozens of black-robed figures soared into the sky and stood in midair, surrounding Nietian and Feng Biu. How dare you trespass into the Ghost King Palace? The dozens of guards roared and simultaneously attacked. Instantly, countless blades and sword shadows pressed down on Nietian and Feng Biu. The strength of these guards was not weak. All of them were around the peak of High God Realm. A bunch of small fries wants to stop your grandpa, Feng. Facing the combined attack of dozens of guards, Feng Biu sneered. Immediately, a pair of illusory wings appeared on his back. With a sudden flap, countless sharp blades shot out. Art. Miserable howls could be heard as dozens of guards died tragically. What a terrifying technique. Nietian couldn't help but exclaim in his mind. Feng Biu's combat strength was truly terrifying. Previously, when Nietian fought with Feng Biu, he didn't pay much attention to him. But now, he discovered that Feng Biu was actually a rare martial artist of wind attribute. Let's go, Nietian, Feng Biu said with a smile. Then, he blurred into action and flew towards a large palace. As soon as Nietian and Feng Biu landed, countless black-robed martial artists surrounded them from all directions. I'll deal with these people, Feng Biu sneered. Intense killing intent was emitted from his eyes. Nietian nodded slightly. A map scroll appeared in his hand. It was the map of the Ghost King Palace that he obtained from Gue Shanquan. Opening the map, Nietian confirmed his location and confirmed 2 routes that would lead him to the underground chambers of the Ghost King Palace. One of the routes was far away, but had few guards. The other route was closer, but had a lot of guards. Trespassing into the Ghost King Palace, you're courting death. At this time, a guard leader roared. His figure moved and punched at Nietian. A terrifying fist shadow rumbled out and pressed down on Nietian. Nietian stomped on the ground and punched out as well. The image of a dragon shook the sky and directly shattered the fist image. The guard commander died on the spot. A martial artist at the peak of High God Realm was already very strong, but unfortunately, such strength was nothing in front of Nietian. Get lost, Feng Biu roared. The wings on his back suddenly flapped, and a violent hurricane appeared, rolling up dozens of ghost face guards and crushing them into meat paste. Feng Biu's strength was too ferocious. For a moment, the other guards didn't dare to rush forward. Nietian. Feng Biu looked at Nietian, waiting for the latter to make a decision. The guards in front of them were just small fries, not worth mentioning at all. The most terrifying thing about the Ghost King Palace was the Ghost King hidden guards and the strange killing array inside. Follow me. Nietian suddenly raised his head and looked at a hall in the distance. His figure moved and directly flew over. He decided to take the shortest route. Even if there were more guards, at least he could save time. Feng Biu followed closely behind Nietian, clearing the small fries and crab guards along the way. Then, the two of them came outside a hall and landed. There is a secret door in the hall. That is the place to enter the underground chamber. Tian looked at the Ghost King Hall in front of him and said in a deep voice, "Let's go in." Feng Biyu did not hesitate and directly rushed into the hall. Tian hurried to catch up, but just as the two of them were about to enter the hall, the void suddenly trembled. Then, a terrifying palm shadow fell, covering the sky and covering the earth. "Watch out!" Feng Biyu screamed and then punched out, forcefully resisting the palm in the air. Boom! In the air, the fist and the palm collided and directly collapsed. The terrifying power wreaked havoc in the space. Feng Buyu's figure trembled, and he could not help but take a few steps back, a trace of blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. "Brother Feng, are you okay?" Tian could not help but cry out when he saw the situation. "I'm fine." Feng Biyu wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His whole body was full of fighting spirit as he looked at the person who attacked in the sky. Tian suddenly looked up and saw dozens of ghost-faced martial artists in the air. Each of them had a strong aura. They were all over gods. Chapter 1684. Oh no! Tian looked at the several dozen over-gods in the sky and could not help but sink. His expression changed as well. There were several dozen over-gods, and the person leading them was a peak over-god. He was even more powerful than Feng Biyu. The strength of the guards of the Ghost King Palace had exceeded Tian's expectations. "It's the hidden guards of the Ghost King." Feng Biyu cried out as well. His voice trembled slightly. "Who are you? How bold of you to trespass into the Ghost King Palace." The green mask on the leader's face trembled as he spoke coldly. His voice was cold. He was Ji Qiushang, the leader of the hidden guards. "Isn't it just the Ghost King Palace? So what if I trespass? What can you do to me?" Feng Biyu immediately calmed down and sneered. His aura rose sharply as he prepared himself for a bitter battle. "What a madman! You're looking to die." Ji Qiushang's eyes flickered coldly as killing intent radiated from him. His lips curled into a cold smile as he growled, "Kill them." "Yes." The several dozen hidden guards replied in unison. Their voices surged. In the next moment, a terrifying aura crashed down on Tian and Feng Biyu like raging waves. Even the ground under their feet couldn't withstand the terrifying power and was directly torn apart. Tian did not hesitate at all when he saw this. He directly activated the 3 forbidden inscriptions, and violent power circulated through his body. His strength skyrocketed, reaching early over God in a single moment. Boom! At the same time, Feng Biyu charged up madly. Like a sharp blade, he shot towards the sky and tore through the pressure above him. "Not bad, but you're still a little too weak for trespassing into the Ghost King Palace." Ji Qiushang's eyes trembled when he saw Feng Biyu charge over. He directly struck out with his sword, and sharp sword intent erupted. A terrifying streak of light shot through the air towards Feng Biyu. "Brother Feng, be careful." Tian could not help but cry out in worry for Feng Biyu when he saw this. Feng Biyu moved quickly. The illusionary wings on his back suddenly flapped, and his speed immediately multiplied. He actually dodged Ji Qiushang's fatal strike. "I'll start with you first." Feng Biyu's figure was like a bolt of lightning, and he instantly approached a shadow guard. He roared, and a whirlpool of wind gushed out from his palm. Suddenly, a sharp wind blade appeared and attacked at an incredible speed. That secret guard didn't even have the time to scream before he died. "Tian, I'm fine." Feng Biyu stood tall in the air and looked at Tian with a smile. "Leave this to me." "Yes." Tian nodded solemnly. With his strength, even if he stayed, he would only become a burden to Feng Biyu. Tian did not hesitate and directly flew into the hall. "Stop him." Seeing this, Ji Qiushang roared in anger, following which several of the Ghost King's secret guards moved together, attacking Tian. "Do you think you can stop me?" Tian suddenly turned around and sneered. He directly stabbed out with his sword, and several flaming swords appeared, like roiling fire dragons, wreaking havoc in the air. 3 forbidden techniques were activated at the same time. Nietian had reached the strength of an early overgod, so it was naturally a piece of cake for him to deal with a few Ghost King's secret guards of the same strength. Bang! Bang! Several muffled sounds rang out. The Ghost King's secret guards were knocked back by Nietian, and they were heavily injured. Nietian did not even look back, and directly rushed into the hall. A bunch of trash. Seeing this, Ji Qiushang roared angrily. He moved, wanting to act himself, but was stopped by Feng Buyu. Your opponent is me. Feng Buyu stared coldly at Ji Qiushang and smiled darkly. Die! Ji Qiushang roared angrily again, stabbing out with his sword. The violent sword intent turned into a wave of air that crushed towards Feng Buyu. Feng Buyu's strength was below Ji Qiushang's, so he did not dare to face him head-on. However, he was much faster than Ji Qiushang. With the agility of the wind wings, he dodged again and mocked. Your strength is only SOSO. You can't hit anyone at all. Damn it! Ji Qiushang was furious. He could only watch as Nietian charged into the hall, but there was nothing he could do. Brat, with your strength, you're looking to die by entering the hall. Ji Qiushang looked at Nietian's back, and deep killing intent surged in his eyes. The Ghost King Hall was like a forbidden ground of the Ghost King Palace. Only the palace master could enter. No one else could. Someone had once tried to enter the Ghost King Hall, but they were killed on the spot by the killing formations of the hall. Their corpses and godheads were not left behind. Nietian broke away from the Ghost King's secret guards and arrived at the entrance of the hall. Suddenly, he froze on the spot. Killing formation. At the same time, Fat Cat's voice sounding a little nervous. Little fatty, can you break it? Nietian asked anxiously, his eyes narrowing. It was because he sensed the existence of a killing formation in the hall that he stopped in his tracks. The secret underground chamber of the Ghost King Palace was not a place one could casually enter. It's impossible to break the killing formation, but I can find a way to avoid it. Fat Cat smiled faintly. His silhouette flickered and appeared in front of the hall. His entire body was enveloped in a glazed aura, slowly probing the killing formation in the hall. The glazed aura was like tentacles, probing the killing formation. A moment later, the killing intent of the killing formation spread out, as if it would explode in the next moment. Nietian's face tightened. This was not the time to be anxious. He could only wait for Fat Cat to find a flaw in the killing formation. Kill him for me. Ji Qiushang could not help but roar out furiously when he saw a Fat Cat suddenly appear beside Nietian, actually probing the killing formation. The other secret guards heard Ji Qiushang's order and moved, charging towards Nietian. Nietian stopped them. Fat Cat could not help but call out when he sensed the killing intent behind him. Nietian frowned. He took a step forward and the sword around him surged. Like a sword that could split the sky, he charged towards the secret guards. Boom! The sword was like a mountain, filled with killing intent. It directly landed on the secret guard who had charged over first. He did not even have the time to cry out before dying on the spot. After Nietian used the 3 forbidden techniques, early overgods were no longer enough in his eyes. The corner of Nietian's mouth couldn't help but twitch as he killed a Ghost King's guard with a single sword strike. The Supreme God's magical laws are indeed powerful. The reason why the strike earlier was so powerful was not just because of the 3 forbidden techniques, but also because of the Overgod's laws. It allowed Nietian's sword intent to increase drastically. Kill him. At this moment, the secret guards roared out furiously at the same time and struck out together. Their auras surged wildly towards Nietian. In that moment, Nietian felt his chest tighten. He actually felt like he could not breathe. It was still too much for him to take on over a dozen overgods at the same time with his current strength. Chapter 1685. Nietian. In the distance, Feng Buyu could not help but cry out in shock when he saw Nietian take on the combined attack of over a dozen overgods. Nietian was simply too crazy. Even Wen Buyu would have to consider whether or not he should take the attack head-on when more than a dozen Lord Gods joined forces. You're looking to die. Ji Qiushang sneered when he saw this. His eyes were extremely somber. In his opinion, Tian would definitely die once the attack landed. Even the weakest of the Ghost King's hidden guards was an early overgod. There were even a few mid-overgods among them. Moreover, the hidden guards usually cultivated together, so their teamwork was very good. If they worked together, even late overgods might not be able to endure their attacks. At this moment, the huge sword of fire slammed over. A great thrum rang out, surging through the air. It actually possessed the power to pierce through the clouds. Bang! 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 Countless attacks landed on the huge sword of fire. Its power was obstructed, and it tottered as if it was about to collapse. Tian retreated rapidly as blood flowed from the corner of his lips. Facing off against over a dozen overgods like this was just too great of a blow for him. Boom! Finally, the huge sword of fire could not endure it any longer and directly collapsed. Boundless sword intent surged through the space. Bang! 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 In the next moment, a terrifying attack fell, directly landing on Tian's astral soul armor. Dazzling cracks appeared on the huge armor, and Tian was forced back repeatedly. Several terrifying wounds appeared on his body, and blood flowed constantly. He was completely covered in blood. However, Tian continued to stand there like an iron wall. The secret guards all gasped. They were completely stunned by the scene before them. Tian was just too terrifying. He had managed to take on an attack like that. Ji Qiushang looked at the bloodied Tian, and his eyes suddenly darkened. He roared, "Kill him for me." Tian's strength made him feel fear, and unease, so he had to kill him. He can't hold on any longer. Let's attack together and kill him. The Ghost King's shadow guards reacted and attacked again, attacking Tian. Tian, let's get out of here. Almost at the same time, the fat cat's voice sounded, and then a map was transmitted into Tian's divine sense. Tian snapped out of his daze and dashed into the Great Hall. His figure was incomparably agile, dashing left and right, ingeniously avoiding the traps of the killing formation, instantly rushing into the main hall. The Ghost King's shadow guards were dumbfounded. They had no idea what was going on. This kid actually entered the Ghost King hall. Could it be that the killing formation in the main hall is gone? A shadow guard exclaimed, and then his eyes became hot, unexpectedly wanting to rush into the main hall. The moment he stepped into the main hall, an invisible killing array was activated. Immediately after, a strange force shot towards him like an arrow released from a bow. Bang! Before anyone could react, a muffled sound rang out, and the dark guard's head was directly blown off. The other shadow guards all gasped, their eyes trembling as they looked at the scene in front of them, as if they were in a dream. At this time, no one dared to take half a step closer to the main hall. Damn it! Ji Qiushang saw that Tian actually magically entered the main hall. He couldn't help but roar, his eyes staring with fire. Tian, this guy is not only strong, I didn't expect that even his pet is so terrifying. Feng Buyu swallowed a mouthful of saliva, secretly said in his heart, "You deserve to die." At this time, Ji Qiushang immediately turned to look at Feng Buyu, revealing his murderous intent. Feng Buyu smiled, his figure moved, and flew up into the sky. Feng Buyu didn't dare to fight Ji Qiushang head-on, but if the latter wanted to kill him, it was not impossible. On the other side, in the Ghost King Hall, Tian avoided the killing formation and entered the main hall, but saw that the main hall was empty. There was no entrance to the secret underground room. The map shows that the secret room entrance is in the center of the main hall. Why is there nothing here? Tian frowned, a puzzled look on his face. In the Ghost King Hall, except for the 4 huge stone pillars with dragon carvings, there was nothing around. Tian, the entrance is inside one of the stone pillars. Fat Cat's figure appeared again, his fat body climbing up a huge stone pillar, as if he was looking for something. Fat Cat checked the 4 stone pillars one by one, and finally locked on to one of the stone pillars, saying, "The secret room entrance is inside this stone pillar. Try to blast it open." "All right." Tian nodded solemnly. Then, he unleashed his sword aura and slammed it into the stone pillar. Boom! With a loud noise, a gap was blasted open on the stone pillar. Nietion stepped forward to take a look. The stone pillar was hollow, and there was a passage inside, leading to the underground secret room. Without hesitation, Nietion stepped out and directly entered the stone pillar passage. His figure descended at an extremely fast speed, feeling that the surrounding space was getting more and more humid. Soon, after descending for about a few thousand meters, Nietion felt the space below suddenly become larger. His figure moved and directly landed on a wide open space. What big secret room! Nietion looked around the vast space and couldn't help but exclaim. He looked around and confirmed that he was in a dark passage at the moment. Looking ahead, it was actually a few thousand meters away. Nietion observed for a moment, and without delay, directly walked along the dark passage. At this time, he felt that there seemed to be a powerful sword intent lurking in the dark passage space, a kind of power similar to some kind of terrible sword seal. This sword seal's aura, why is it somewhat familiar? Nietion frowned and murmured, "It's the aura of the three evils sword seal." Fat Cat seemed to have discovered something and exclaimed. Nietion suddenly froze and then immediately sensed it, and his expression changed. The sword seal aura in the space was indeed the three evils sword seal. Nietion had fought with the three evils sword seal martial artists and was very familiar with this aura, but at this moment he was very puzzled because what he felt was not a single kind of sword seal aura, but more like the aura produced by the fusion of the three evil sword seals. Because of this, Nietion didn't immediately think of the three evil sword seal. Three kinds of sword seal seem to have fused together. This is too scary. Nietion frowned, and his eyes could not help but tremble. The three evils sword seal. Each of the sword seals contained terrible power, and rumor had it that it was comparable to the 10 strongest seals. If the three kinds of sword seals were to be fused together, the terrifying power could be imagined. Nietion was stunned for a few seconds, then reacted and continued to move forward. The more he moved forward, the more he felt the sword seal aura in the space became stronger. What the hell is going on? Nietion looked puzzled. It seemed that the underground secret room of the Ghost King Palace had a mystery. Who is it? At this time, a low voice sounded, revealing a trace of anger and tension. Chapter 1686. Rui Qinyu. Nietion suddenly heard a voice, and his face stiffened. Although the voice was very weak, Nietion was very sure that the owner of the voice was definitely Rui Qinyu. Immediately afterwards, Nietion snapped out of his daze and dashed towards the source of the sound. His speed was very fast. The further he went, the stronger the aura of the sword seal in the air. After a while, Nietion walked out of the secret passage. In front of him was an empty space that looked like a huge cave. The aura of the sword seal is coming from here. Rui Qinyu's voice is also coming from here. Nietion looked at the huge cave in front of him, and the corner of his mouth trembled. He was actually a little nervous. Who is it? Just then, there was another scream coming from the cave. It was very clear. Rui Qinyu. Hearing this voice, Nietion's eyes could not help but tremble. Then, he moved and stepped into the cave. The moment he entered the cave, Nietion suddenly felt that the aura of the sword seal in the surrounding space had become stronger. It surged wildly as if it wanted to penetrate into his body. However, Nietion did not care about this. Instead, he looked up at the top of the cave, and his whole person was stunned. In the midair above the cave, a terrifying sword seal was floating there. It was filled with extremely terrifying sword seal aura, and it was extremely violent. And in the middle of the sword seal, two figures were standing. They were two very familiar faces, Rui Qinyu and Tawny. At this time, Rui Qinyu looked at Nietion. Her delicate face was stiff. Her mouth was slightly open, but she could not speak. You are Nietion? It was Tawny who reacted when she saw Nietion and spoke with a trembling voice. Nietion's appearance had changed a little, but his eyes and aura had not. Rui Qinyu, Tawny, you're really here. At this time, Nietion's stiff face relaxed. When he saw the two people in front of him, he couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Nietion, it's really you. Rui Qinyu's eyes trembled as if she couldn't believe what was happening in front of her. Tears welled up in her eyes. She had been imprisoned here for several months, and during this period of time, the face that appeared the most in her mind was Nietion. In the past, when she was in the plain world, she was in danger many times, and every time, it was Nietion who appeared and saved her. Imperceptibly, she had developed a deep dependence on Nietion in her heart. Therefore, when she was imprisoned this time, the person she thought about the most was Nietion. Rui Qinyu, it's really me. Nietion became cold, smiled faintly. Nietion, why are you here? Rui Qinyu was much calmer now. As if she suddenly thought of something, she frowned and said, It's too dangerous here. You should leave quickly. Rui Qinyu, Tawny, I know everything. Ruiyu, Jiansu is safe now. I'll get you out immediately. Nietion smiled faintly and gave a simple explanation to reassure them. Nietion, you can't save us. Rui Qinyu looked at Nietion. Her delicate face was obviously stiff, and there was a trace of fear in her eyes. Nietion couldn't help but be stunned. He knew that Rui Qinyu was a determined person and rarely showed fear. He rarely saw Rui Qinyu so panicked. Rui Qinyu, I'll definitely get you out of here. Nietion looked at Rui Qinyu, his expression extremely determined. Since he was already here, how could he leave without doing anything? Nietion took a step forward and felt the sword seal that enveloped Rui Qinyu and Tawny. He couldn't help but frown. That sword seal was the three evil sword seal. It contained unimaginable power. But at this moment, the three evil sword seal was a cage that trapped Rui Qinyu and Tawny. Nietion, this sword seal cage was set by the Ghost King Palace Master. Except for him, no one can break it. Rui Qinyu's eyes flickered, and she couldn't help but look at Tawny beside her. Tawny was pregnant and could give birth at any time. If Nietion couldn't break the sword seal cage, then Rui Qinyu and Tawny's child would be born in the cage. The baby would be born, but its innate soul wasn't strong enough. If it was exposed to such a terrifying sword seal, it was very likely that it would die prematurely. Tawny, what's wrong with your eyes? At this time, Nietion suddenly noticed that the scar of dusk on Tawny's forehead had become very dim, even faintly black. I'm fine. Do you have a way to get us out? Tawny asked nervously with a painful expression. She knew how terrifying the sword seal cage was, but she really wanted to get out. Not for herself, but for the child in her belly. During this period of time, in order to prevent the child in her belly from getting hurt, Tawny had been opening the Scar of Dusk to resist the sword seal's aura. So her Scar of Dusk was impacted by the sword seal and became dim and black. I will definitely get you out. Nietion's expression was solemn, and he said in a deep voice, Nietion, this sword seal cage is very scary. It's very difficult to break. At this time, before Nietion could speak, Fat Cat's figure appeared, frowned, and said, I speculate that this sword seal is inherited from the ancient times. With the Ghost King Palace Master's strength, it's impossible for him to release such a terrifying sword seal cage. When Rui Qinyu and Tawny saw a Fat Cat suddenly appear on Nietion's shoulder, they were stunned but did not speak. The Ghost King Palace Master just used this sword seal to imprison Rui Qinyu and Tawny, right? Nietion frowned. It turned out that the sword seal cage was inherited from the ancient times. No wonder it was so scary. Yes, Little Fat Cat nodded and said, this is a sword seal that is perfectly fused with the three evil sword seals. It contains a terrifying power. The Ghost King Palace Master can use the sword seal as a cage. It can be said to be very powerful. Using the sword seal as a cage, the Ghost King Palace Master was not only powerful, but also extremely vicious. Under the shroud of the sword seal, if Rui Qinyu and Tawny dared to resist, the sword seal would inevitably release a terrible power. That kind of power was not something the two could bear. Fat, how do I save them? Nietion asked anxiously. He didn't have much time left. If the Ghost King Palace Master returned to the Ghost King Palace, it would be terrible. It's very difficult. Fat Cat looked serious and said, "The power in the sword seal is too strong. With your current strength, you can't break it at all. If you force your way through the sword seal, the two girls will also be in danger." "Then what should I do?" Nyetian frowned. His face couldn't help but sink. He also felt the horror of the sword seal. If this kind of terrible power was released, not only would Rui Qinyu and Tawny be in danger, but Nyetian would also be in danger. Fat Cat frowned. Her face obviously became a lot more dignified. Her eyes kept flickering, as if she was thinking about something. "Nyetian, there's only one way to save them now." After a moment, Fat Cat's eyes tightened, suddenly looked at Nyetian, and said in a deep voice, "What way?" Nyetian was stunned for a moment. His eyes couldn't help but flicker. Chapter 1687. Fuse the sword seal. Nyetian was stunned when he heard Fat Cat's words. He couldn't react for a moment. "Yes." Fat Cat nodded heavily and said, "It's impossible to break the sword seal by force. The only way is to directly fuse the sword seal and let it enter your body." This, Nyetian's eyes widened, and he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He finally understood what the little Fat Cat meant. Fat Cat wanted Nyetian to directly fuse the three evil sword seal. This was a relatively gentle method that wouldn't cause the sword seal to resist, but it was very dangerous for Nyetian. When he fought with Ouyang Lingxie, Ji Wushang, and the others, his body had been immersed by the 9 evil sword seal and the evil woman sword seal. The powerful impact was still fresh in his memory. The 3 evil sword seal in front of him was the power of the 3 sword seals combined. If such a terrible power entered Nyetian's body, it would be a terrible impact. Could Nyetian's martial body withstand it? Nyetian, even I have no way of estimating what kind of power this sword seal contains. So if you want to fuse with the sword seal, the risk involved is very high. Little Fat Cat said in a low voice. It was precisely because the risk was too great that he had been hesitant to say it. Because he knew that with Nyetian's personality, he would definitely choose to fuse the sword seal. Since my martial body can withstand the 3 forbidden techniques, it can definitely withstand the 3 evil sword seal. Nyetian calmed down at this moment. His eyes trembled and instantly became firm. He had made a decision in his heart. Fuse the sword seal. Nyetian, don't be impulsive. At this time, Rui Qinyu heard what Nyetian was going to do next. Her pretty face tightened and she exclaimed, "You don't know how terrifying this sword seal cage is. You can't withstand the impact of the sword seal." "Rui Qinyu, believe me." Nyetian suddenly raised his head and looked at Rui Qinyu with a burning gaze. The corners of his mouth raised into a smile, and his body released a domineering confidence. "Nyetian, Rui Qinyu sensed the determination in Nyetian's eyes. She was struck dumb for a second, and tears welled up in her eyes. How could she not know that Nyetian was risking his life to save her? "Nyetian, since you've made up your mind, don't hesitate anymore." Fat Cat had also calmed down by now, and spoke in a serious tone. Nyetian did not have much time. If the Ghost King Palace Master suddenly returned while he was integrating the 3 evil sword seal, it would be terrible. "Yes." Nyetian nodded. His silhouette flickered as he approached the 3 evil sword seal. What a terrifying sword seal! Only now did Nyetian realize the power of the 3 evil sword seal. It seemed to be even stronger than the 3 great forbidden arts. The Ghost King Palace Master must know how terrifying the 3 evil sword seal was, but he didn't fuse with it. He must be afraid that his martial body wouldn't be able to withstand it. The Ghost King Palace Master was an early-stage paramount god, and he also had the evil woman's sword seal inside of him. If he didn't dare to take the risk in this situation, it showed how terrifying the 3 evil sword seal was. Nyetian let out a long breath of impure air. He calmed down and sat down cross-legged in midair. The 9 dragon veins in his body began to slowly revolve, and at the same time, sword will surge through his meridians. His body began to release strands of sword will, like tentacles, which spread out towards the 3 evil sword seal. Boom! The moment Nyetian's sword will touch the three evils sword seal, the sword seal vortex released a terrifying force, which then released directly towards Nyetian. At the same time, Tawny felt that the sword seal had become violent. She couldn't withstand it anymore. She screamed, and a mouthful of blood spurted out from the corner of her mouth. "Tawny, are you okay?" Rui Chinyu screamed, and then released a force from her body to protect Tawny. Nyetian integrated the sword seal. This was the most gentle way, but it still stimulated the sword seal to a certain extent. If he forcibly broke through the sword seal, Tawny and Rui Chinyu would definitely be annihilated by the impact of the sword seal. At this time, the power in the sword seal vortex began to rush towards Nyetian. In the blink of an eye, Nyetian felt a raging power battering through his body, threatening to devour all of his meridians and bones. The sudden pain hit his whole body. Nyetian couldn't help but scream. His body began to tremble, and his face became distorted. Nyetian. Rui Chinyu looked at Nyetian and couldn't help but scream. Her heart was in her throat. Her 9-color pupils could clearly see everything that was happening inside Nyetian's body. The power of the sword seal was like raging waves, crashing against Nyetian's martial body, as if it was going to shatter everything inside of him. The power of the three evil sword seal was unimaginably terrifying. As the sword seal vortex continued to flow into Nyetian's body, the pain was several times more painful than before, causing him to scream again. At this time, as the sword seal vortex rushed into Nyetian's body, Rui Chinyu and Tawny felt the pressure around them lessen. But Nyetian was in great pain, as if his whole body was about to be torn apart. After a while, the sword seal vortex completely entered Nyetian's body, and Rui Chinyu and Tawny got rid of the sword seal. Rui Chinyu sent Tawny out of the cave, and then moved to Nyetian's side. At this moment, Nyetian's body was dripping with blood, and there were countless terrible wounds on his body. The wounds were dark in color, and the blood coagulated into blood clots, accumulating at the wounds. It was extremely frightening. Nyetian. Rui Chinyu saw that Nyetian's meridians had all collapsed, and there were cracks on his bones. She couldn't help but scream, and her eyes trembled. "Oh no!" At the same time, Fat Cat screamed and said in a trembling voice, "He can't hold on any longer." The horror of the three evil sword seal was beyond Fat Cat's expectation. It was even more terrible than the forbidden rune that Nyetian had absorbed before. Even if Nyetian had the tear of the princess in his body, he couldn't withstand the impact of the three evil sword seal. Fat Cat felt that the three evil sword seal was becoming more and more violent in Nyetian's body, and it was crazily tearing his martial body apart. If this continued, Nyetian would definitely die. At this time, Nyetian's divine sense had become blurred, and his body was stiff and numb. He could no longer feel anything. Fat Cat's eyes flickered, but there was nothing he could do. Nyetian's body trembled, and the breath of life in his body became weaker and weaker, as if it would disappear at any time. His martial body was indeed very strong, but unfortunately, his strength was too weak. If he had the strength of a lord or a peak high god, he might have a chance to integrate the three evil sword seal. But now, he no longer had the chance. This time, Nyetian seemed to have lost the gamble. Nyetian. Feeling that Nyetian's breath of life was getting weaker and weaker, Rui Chinyu's beautiful eyes flickered, and she felt that there was a terrible power surging in her body. This power became stronger and stronger, and in the end, it suddenly converged and rushed towards her eyes. In the next moment, Rui Chinyu seemed to feel something, and she couldn't help but scream. Then, her eyes suddenly changed and turned into a dark green color. Chapter 1688. Open the 9-colored pupils again. The Fat Cat suddenly looked at Rui Chinyu and immediately understood. The latter had actually opened the 9-colored pupils again in her grief. The 8th pupil, the 9-colored pupils, had 9 different colors and needed to be opened 1 pupil at a time. Rui Chinyu's eyes flickered, and her pupils turned into a dark green color. It was very strange. This is the green pupils. The fat cat looked at Rui Qinyu and exclaimed. The latter had opened the green pupils of the 9 colored pupils. Rui Qinyu's eyes widened slightly, and then a green light was released. It enveloped Nietian and directly entered his body. What a powerful life force! The fat cat was stunned as it felt the powerful life force. It was rumored that the 9 colored pupils had 9 pupils, and each pupil represented a different attribute. The red pupil represented the power of fire. The blue pupil represented the power of ice. The black pupil represented the power of darkness, and so on. The green pupils that Rui Qinyu had opened now represented the power of the myriad-wood attribute. This was a powerful life force. The moment the myriad-wood energy entered Nietian's body, a miraculous scene happened. The wounds on Nietian's body began to heal quickly, and the torn meridians in his body also slowly recovered. As the power of wood surged into Nietian's body, his almost depleted life force rapidly grew stronger. In the blink of an eye, Nietian, who had been on the verge of death, started to show signs of life. The myriad-wood energy can stimulate a warrior's life force. It's really magical. The fat cat saw this scene and couldn't help but tremble as it muttered. The myriad-wood energy didn't directly provide the warrior with life force, but stimulated the warrior's own life force. Nietian's life force was already very strong, and with the supreme dragon bloodline and the stellar energy, his life force was even stronger than an overgod warrior. The power of the 10,000 would have stimulated Nietian's own life force, allowing his shattered martial body to instantly recover. When Rui Qinyu saw that the power of 10,000 would have an effect on Nietian, her eyes surged with even more green power, pouring into Nietian's body. The life force in Nietian's body became even more violent, and the damaged meridians in his body were instantly healed. Nietian's consciousness instantly became clear, and his twisted face returned to normal. At this time, Nietian felt the blood in his body start to boil, as if there was a power that was constantly surging. All of a sudden, the fat cat screamed as if it had found something unbelievable. The 3 evils sword mark is merging with Nietian's blood. The fat cat didn't see wrongly. The 3 evil sword mark was merging with Nietian's blood. How is this possible? The fat cat confirmed this point, and its cat face was petrified. It couldn't believe what it was seeing at all. It originally estimated that if Nietian could withstand the 3 evil sword mark, the best result would be that he could absorb some of the power of the 3 evil sword mark and increase his strength. But now, the 3 evil sword mark was actually merging with Nietian's blood. Nietian wasn't a member of the 3 evils family, and there were no other sword marks in his body. How could he merge the 3 evils sword mark into his blood? This was too strange. Is the 3 evils sword mark going to merge with Nietian's blood and give birth to a new bloodline power? The fat cat screamed, its body trembling. At this time, Nietian felt that his blood was boiling. It was crazily absorbing the power of the 3 evils sword mark and transforming this power into a new bloodline power. Realizing this, Nietian couldn't help but change his expression. He was shocked. As the power of thousands of woods kept surging in Nietian's body, it stimulated his blood to boil, and the 3 evil sword mark merged with his blood faster and faster. After a while, the 3 evils sword mark disappeared completely and merged with Nietian's blood. At this moment, Nietian felt indescribably comfortable. The power in his body was bursting, as if he had endless power. He suddenly opened his eyes and stood up directly. His entire body released a powerful sword aura. His sharp aura looked down on the world. Nietian suddenly felt that there was something wrong with the momentum around him. Then he realized something. His eyes trembled violently, and his whole body froze on the spot. Nietian, your level of swordsmanship. The fat cat also realized something at this time. It opened its mouth wide, but it was too shocked to say the following words. My level of swordsmanship has reached the level of sword essence. After being frozen on the spot for more than 10 seconds, Nietian finally reacted. The shock in his heart was written all over his face. The three evil sword mark merged with his blood and gave birth to the three evil sword vein in Nietian, and his level of swordsmanship directly increased by 1 level, reaching the level of sword essence. This was too terrifying. Even Nietian himself found it hard to accept. It was more difficult to increase one's level of swordsmanship than to increase one's strength. Every level of swordsmanship was almost equivalent to a level. For a swordsman, this was a qualitative leap. Nietian had just reached the level of swordbone a few days ago. Now, he had directly reached the level of sword essence. This speed of advancement was outrageous. Many swordsman geniuses had to spend hundreds or even thousands of years to reach the next level, but Nietian only used a few days. This comparison was hopeless. The three evil sword vein was simply too terrifying for Nietian. If Nietian had only absorbed the power of the three evil sword mark, at most his strength would have increased. However, he had nurtured the three evils sword vein. Although this did not increase his strength, it was a qualitative leap for his body of martial arts. This was not only an improvement of his body of martial arts, but also an improvement of his talent in swordsmanship. Nietian's talent in swordsmanship was very strong, and his comprehension of swordsmanship was top-notch. He was definitely a top genius in the playing world. However, compared to the swordsmanship geniuses in the realm, his talent in swordsmanship was a little weak, even weaker than Mo Ihan. But now, Nietian had the three evil sword vein in his body. This was definitely a stronger talent in swordsmanship than any of the three evils sword mark bloodlines. At this moment, Nietian was definitely a top genius in swordsmanship even in the 9 realms. After a long time, Nietian finally calmed down. He looked at Rui Qinyu and suddenly saw blood at the corner of her eyes. He could not help but ask nervously, "Rui Qinyu, are you okay?" Nietian was able to nurture the three evil sword vein because of Rui Qinyu's green eyes. The power of the myriad would have caused his blood to boil and fuse with the three evils sword mark's power. Nietian was worried that Rui Qinyu had used the 9-colored eyes too much, and the blood-devouring power in her body had flared up. The blood-devouring power was a negative effect of the 9-colored eyes. The more 9-colored eyes were opened, the more terrifying the blood-devouring power would become. "I'm fine." Rui Qinyu squeezed out a smile and said faintly. But just as she finished speaking, her body sank and she could no longer stand. Nietian quickly rushed forward and hugged Rui Qinyu. Using his divine sense, he could not help but tremble. He anxiously asked, "Rui Qinyu, which eye have you opened?" Nietian could feel that the blood-devouring power in Rui Qinyu's body was very violent and was crazily devouring her blood. Chapter 1689. Nietian's expression flickered with astonishment. The fifth pupil. Nietian was taken aback. He didn't think that Rui Qinyu had already awakened the fifth pupil of the 9-colored pupils. The 9-colored pupils was ranked 8th out of the 10 unique pupils, but other than Rui Qinyu, Nietian had never seen anyone who had awakened more than 3 pupils. But now, Rui Qinyu had awakened the 5th pupil. How could he not be shocked? At the same time, Nietian also felt extremely worried, because the more pupils Rui Qinyu awakened, the more terrifying the blood-devouring force would be. "Nietian, I'm fine." Rui Qinyu could tell that Nietian was worried. She squeezed out a smile and said faintly. Nietian nodded. At this moment, although Rui Qinyu was under the pressure of the blood-devouring force, her life was temporarily not in danger. "Nietian, let's leave this place first." Rui Qinyu frowned and said anxiously. "Okay." Nietian nodded, and a pair of astral soul wings appeared on his back. Wild energy enveloped Rui Qinyu, and the two of them immediately left the place. Nietian brought Tawny with him and sprinted along the tunnel. A moment later, he arrived at the entrance of the tunnel. Without hesitation, Nietian brought Rui Qinyu and Tawny and dashed forward like a sharp sword. In the blink of an eye, Nietian dashed out of the stone pillar and arrived at the Great Hall. "I'm finally out." Nietian couldn't help but let out a long breath of impure air, his expression looking much more relaxed. Yet Tian steadied himself and looked outside the great hall. Feng Buyu and the Ghost King's secret guards were still fighting. "Let's leave." Nie Tian cast a glance at Rui Qinyu, as a faint smile appeared on his face. He retracted his aura as the astral wings enveloped Rui Qinyu and Tawny, after which his silhouette flickered as he dashed out of the great hall. Nie Tian's figure was agile. Even though he was carrying 2 people, he still easily passed through the killing array in the main hall and arrived outside the array. "It's that kid." Nie Tian's sudden appearance immediately attracted the attention of the Ghost King's shadow guards. Many of the shadow guard cried out in shock and flew into the air, staring at Nie Tian with killing intent in their eyes. At this time, Ji Qiushang also noticed Nie Tian, and his eyes trembled, his face filled with astonishment. He had never imagined that Nie Tian would actually be able to come out safely after entering the Ghost King Hall. In the next moment, Ji Qiushang discovered that there were 2 more people beside Nie Tian. His expression couldn't help but stiffen, and his eyes trembled violently. He immediately recognized that one of the women beside Nie Tian was the 72nd wife that the Ghost King Palace Lord was going to marry. At this time, he finally understood that the reason Nie Tian and Feng Buyu barged into the Ghost King Palace was to save someone. "Stop him!" Ji Qiushang knew this, and his expression changed as he roared in a low voice. If he allowed Nie Tian and the others to leave today, the Ghost King Palace Lord would definitely not let him off easily. If the Ghost King Palace Lord's new wife was snatched away from the Ghost King Palace, then he, as the Shadow Guard commander, would be too useless. "Yes." The group of Ghost King's secret guards replied in unison, and their silhouettes flashed, madly rushing towards Nie Tian. Nie Tian, facing tens of Ghost King's secret guards, not only was there fear in his eyes, but there was also killing intent. Nie Tian. Rui Qinyu sensed how terrifying the Ghost King secret guards were. Her beautiful eyes flickered, unable to hide the fear in her eyes. "Don't be afraid. I'll definitely get you out of here." Nie Tian smiled faintly and took a step forward. His figure soared into the sky like a sharp sword. Sword aura bloomed from his body, and his whole body was covered with black magical symbols. Nie Tian's current strength was still at the peak of mid-god. Even if his way of the sword had increased, he still had to use the 3 great forbidden techniques against overgods. With the 3 forbidden techniques activated, Nie Tian's aura skyrocketed, and his strength skyrocketed to early overgod. However, a smear of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He had just activated the 3 forbidden techniques not long ago, and now that he activated them again, his martial body was under great pressure. "Kill!" The Ghost King's secret guards roared in unison, and their aura merged together like a vast ocean, pressing down on Nie Tian. Nie Tian was not afraid at all against the combined forces of several dozen Ghost King's secret guards. Instead, he moved and slashed out with his sword. Boom! In the air, a sword flashed with a sharp light, slashing towards one of the Ghost King's secret guards. With a single strike, Nie Tian forcefully broke through the combined pressure of several dozen Ghost King secret guards. When the sword landed, one of the Ghost King's secret guards died on the spot. The others were stunned by the scene before them. They could not help but tremble as chills ran down their spines. They did not expect Nie Tian's strength to be so terrifying. How is this possible? Ji Qiushang was also stunned, and he cried out in surprise. He discovered that Nie Tian seemed to be much stronger than before after coming out of the Ghost King Hall. Feng Buyu was also stunned. He did not expect Nie Tian to be so ferocious. "Those who stand in my way will die." Nie Tian stood in the air and sneered. He glanced past the Ghost King's secret guards with his murderous gaze, and they could not help but retreat. The increase in his way of the sword made Nie Tian's sword intent several times more powerful. Although he was only an early overgod right now, a single strike was enough to kill mid or even late overgods instantly. If he fought with everything he had, he could even fend off peak overgods. Unfortunately, his strength had only been temporarily increased by the 3 forbidden techniques, so he could not maintain it for too long. After scaring away the Ghost King's secret guards, Nietion's figure flickered, bringing Raindrop, Thousand Leaves, and Little Lee with him as he directly arrived beside Feng Buyu. Nietion, are these the people you want to save? Feng Buyu looked at Nietion in great surprise. He had never thought that Nietion would actually save them. Yeah. Nietion nodded slightly and said, Brother Feng, please take them away first. I'll stop these people. Feng Buyu frowned. He was stunned. He doubted his ears. The enemies before them were several dozen Overgod Ghost King secret guards, as well as a peak Overgod, Ji Qiushang. Could Nietion stop them all by himself? Brother Feng, trust me. Take them to the leader of the Sinluo Hall. I'll come find you very soon. Nietion nodded slightly. His eyes were filled with great confidence. Feng Buyu's current battle prowess might not be as great as Nietion's, but he was faster than Nietion. Getting him to leave with Rui Qianyu and Tawny was the best choice. All right, be careful. Feng Buyu could feel the confidence in Nietion's eyes. He nodded and prepared to leave with Rui Qianyu and Tawny. Nietion. Rui Qianyu frowned. Her eyes were filled with reluctance. Nietion smiled faintly and said, Don't worry, I'll definitely go find you. Feng Buyu no longer hesitated and turned to leave. If you want to leave, you'll have to get through me first. But at this moment, Ji Qiushang took a step forward. His aura surged violently, like a huge city wall stretching across the sky. Do you think you can block my sword? Nietion looked at Ji Qiushang and sneered. He raised his sword and released a terrifying sword intent aura from his body. Vortexes of sword intent surged around his body, churning madly as if they wanted to devour everything in their path. Chapter 1690. Nietion's figure stood in the air, the sword aura around him surging. It was extremely terrifying, several times stronger than the sword intent he released before. At this moment, Nietion was like a sharp sword that could kill the heavens, killing everything in its path. With the opening of the tri-evil sword vein, Nietion's combat strength increased once again, allowing him to fight Ji Qiushang head-on. Ji Qiushang was a peak lord god and a swordsman. He was a good opponent. He could use him to test out just how strong the tri-evil sword vein was. This aura. Ji Qiushang felt the sword intent around Nietion's body. His eyes couldn't help but tremble, and his expression became sluggish. He felt that the sword intent released by Nietion was somewhat similar to the evil woman's sword seal, but there was also a difference. It seemed to be even more terrifying than the evil woman's sword seal. How is this possible? Ji Qiushang was shocked. He didn't think that there would be a sword seal more terrifying than the evil woman's sword seal in this world. He didn't think that Nietion's tri-evil sword vein was the bloodline power formed by the fusion of the tri-evil sword seal. Of course, it was stronger than the evil woman's sword shadow. Nietion's eyes locked onto Ji Qiushang. His eyes trembled slightly, and the sword intent around his body became even stronger. Kill! In the next moment, he roared and stabbed out with his sword. Endless sword intent instantly condensed, and a 5,000-meter-long sword shadow appeared, blasting towards Ji Qiushang. At first glance, this sword shadow didn't seem any different from the sword shadow Nietion used before. But if one looked closely, they would find that outside the sword shadow, there was a whirlpool of sword intent. It was like a rune, wrapping around the sword shadow and increasing the power of the sword intent by several times. Ji Qiushang suddenly felt the approaching murderous intent. His eyes couldn't help but tremble. Only then did he react. He quickly stabbed out with his sword, and a huge sword shadow appeared. It slashed down from the sky, causing the void to tremble slightly. Boom! In the void, the two sword shadows were like two wild beasts, colliding with each other. A loud bang resounded through the space. Billowing waves of air shot out, and a terrifying, oppressive aura spread through the space. Chi. The sword shadows collided with each other, and the sword wills collided with each other. In the void, The endless sword light shone brightly, filling the entire space. The group of Ghost King shadow guards were stunned by the scene in front of them, their expressions sluggish, and they were speechless. Boom! At this time, one of the sword images occupied an overwhelming advantage. Sword light flourished, and a huge sword image came crashing down, like a collapsing mountain, smashing towards Ji Qiushang. Suddenly sensing that something was amiss, Ji Qiushang's eyes trembled, and then he let out a startled cry. The sword intent around him condensed into a sword shield, but when the sword shadow descended, the sword shield directly shattered. Ji Qiushang's figure was like a kite with a broken string, flying backwards, leaving behind a trail of blood in the air. "Commander!" When the Ghost King's secret guard saw this, they exclaimed in unison, their eyes filled with extreme disbelief. The almost invincible Lord Commander in their eyes was actually sent flying by a sword. This scene was too shocking. Ji Qiushang's figure whistled through the air, but then he suddenly paused and stabilized himself in midair. He stabilized himself, his body dripping with blood, and the green ghost mask on his face trembled. How could he have imagined that the power of a single sword strike from Ye Tian would be so terrifying? Not dead. Ye Tian looked at Ji Qiushang, and the corner of his mouth twitched slightly, as if he was somewhat disappointed. He had activated the 3 forbidden techniques and the tribal sword range, but he had not killed Ji Qiushang with his full strength, which made him rather dissatisfied. This was the first time he had opened the tribal sword range, and he was not familiar with its power, so it was normal that he could not kill Ji Qiushang. After all, Ji Qiushang was a peak-over god. If he died like this, it would be rather laughable. The first time the tribal sword range was opened, it had almost allowed Ye Tian to kill a peak-over god. The strength of the tribal sword range was unimaginable. At this time, Feng Biyu had already taken the opportunity to leave. Ye Tian's face relaxed a lot. "Brat, what kind of power is this?" Ji Qiushang's eyes trembled, and then he shook off the blood on his body and said with a deep voice. If he had not experienced it personally, Ji Qiushang would not have believed that such a terrifying sword seal existed in the world. "You don't have the right to know what kind of power this is," Ye Tianling sneered, and his eyes were filled with disdain. "How arrogant!" Ji Qiushang roared furiously. His body trembled, and he wanted to attack, but he vomited a mouthful of blood and almost lost his footing in the air. Although the attack just now had not taken his life, it had heavily injured him. "Kill!" At this moment, the corner of Ye Tian's mouth twitched, and he spat out a single word. It was cold and murderous, and then he moved, directly slashing at the sword behind him. Boom! The berserk sword pierced out without any warning. The sword beam shot out 10,000 meters away. The dazzling light trembled. Several Ghost King shadow guards were directly swallowed by the sword shadow. They didn't even have time to scream. Ye Tian's sword fell, and he suddenly turned around, looking at the other Ghost King's secret guards, his eyes incomparably cold. The dozens of Ghost King's secret guards were stared at by Ye Tian, and suddenly felt a bone-chilling cold spread in their hearts, as if they had fallen into an ice cellar, and the cold penetrated their bones. At this time, Ye Tian was too terrifying, and his strength was so terrifying that it made people's hair stand on end. Like a god of death, he stood in the air. "Tell the Ghost King Palace Master that the person who took away Rui Qianyu is Ye Tian. If he wants to kill me, he can come to Sun Luo City to find me." Ye Tian did not attack again, but spoke in a deep voice, and every word and sentence was filled with extreme arrogance and arrogance. He killed the Ghost King's secret guard to send a message to the Ghost King Palace Master. "I, Ye Tian, am not to be trifled with. What the Ghost King Palace Master did to Rui Qianyu and the others will not end here. It will not be long before Ye Tian will visit the Ghost King Palace again, and at that time, it will be the death of the Ghost King Palace Master." As the cold and murderous voice fell, the Ghost King's secret guards were all silent, not even daring to breathe. Ye Tianling laughed, no longer hesitating. His figure moved, stepped into the air, and swept away. Ji Qiushang and the others stared at Nie Tian's figure in a daze, their eyes trembling violently, and did not dare to chase after him. Nie Tian, until Nie Tian's figure disappeared completely. Ji Qiushang's trembling eyes recovered and was replaced by rage. Nie Tian saved Rui Qinyu and the others under his nose. How could he not be angry? But what he did not know was that Nie Tian took away not only Rui Qinyu and Tani, but also the ancient inheritance of the three evil sword seal. When the Ghost King Palace Master learned that Nie Tian integrated the three evils sword seal, what kind of expression would he have? It would certainly not be good. High in the sky, Nie Tian's figure rushed wildly, and soon left the Ghost King Palace. After confirming that Ji Qiushang and the others did not chase after him, Tian's momentum dissipated, but his face was extremely pale. Using three forbidden techniques in succession, coupled with the activation of the three evil sword seal, made his body very weak, and he urgently needed to recover. Nie Tian did not go directly back to the Mo family's small courtyard, but to the dark forest. He was worried that Ouyang Fu and Mo Yanwei were in trouble, and wanted to rush over to see. The Ghost King Palace Master did not return to the Ghost King Palace, which meant that he was stalled by Ouyang Fu and Mo Yanwei. Nie Tian's speed was very fast, and a moment later, his figure appeared in the dark forest. But strangely, he did not see Ouyang Fu and the others. Chapter 1691. In the Mo family's courtyard, Nie Tian's figure appeared in midair. Not good. Something happened. Even before he entered the courtyard, he smelled the stench of blood. His brows creased into a frown, and his figure flickered, landing in the middle of the courtyard. The moment Nie Tian landed on the ground, he dashed towards the main hall. Second brother. At this time, a sorrowful cry came from the main hall. It was Mo Yuani's voice. Nie Tian's face darkened as he appeared in the main hall. Nie Tian. Seeing Nie Tian's sudden appearance, everyone was stunned for a moment before exclaiming in unison. Nie Tian's face was gloomy as he looked at Mo Yanwei lying on the ground in the main hall. His body was drenched in blood, and his vitality was fading rapidly. Mr. Mo, what's wrong? Nie Tian took a step forward, sensing Mo Yanwei's aura. He was injured by the Ghost King Palace Master's sword, and the sword intent has spread to his meridians. I'm afraid he won't be able to live. Ouyang Fu's face was pale, and he said in a low voice. Nie Tian glanced at Ouyang Fu. The latter's expression was solemn, and his face was deathly pale. His aura was weak, and it seemed like his injuries weren't light. The Ghost King Palace Master was very strong. Even if Ouyang Fu and Mo Yanwei joined hands, they were still defeated. Nie Tian saw that although Ouyang Fu's injuries were serious, his life wasn't in danger. He ignored him and walked to Mo Yanwei's side. Releasing his divine sense, Nie Tian sensed Mo Yanwei's condition, and a frown appeared on his face. Mr. Nie, my second brother. Mo Yuani's eyes quivered when he saw Nie Tian's expression, and his voice trembled. Sword intent invaded his body, shattering all his meridians. His true meridians and godheads are also heavily injured. Nie Tian's expression was gloomy as he explained. This, Mo Yuani was dumbfounded, and tears welled up in his eyes. Rest assured, Mr. Mo, I can save him. Nie Tian laughed at this moment and then squatted down. The sword essence around him slowly gushed out and enveloped Mo Yanwei. The sword essence seeped into the latter's body. Nie Tian's sword intent was gentle, like the spring breeze and rain. It nourished Mo Yanwei's broken meridians and forced the remaining sword intent out of his body. What? Ouyang Fu and Mo Yuani couldn't help but stare at Nie Tian in disbelief. By now, both of them already knew that the Ghost King Palace Master was from the Sangxi family, Ji family. The wound on Mo Yanwei's body was left by the Ghost King Palace Lord's evil sword seal. How could Nie Tian's sword intent be so terrifying that it could actually force out the power of the evil sword seal? After a while, under the nourishment of Nie Tian's sword will, Mo Yanwei's meridians were slightly healed, and the wounds all over his body were getting better. His breath was stabilized, and his life was no longer in danger. He's fine. Nie Tian stood up, but his face was a bit pale, and his forehead was covered with beads of sweat. His body was in urgent need of recovery, and now he had to use the Sanxi sword vein. It was too much for him to bear. Mr. Nie Tian, your sword intent. Mo Yuani looked at Nie Tian with a surprised expression. He clearly felt that Nie Tian's sword intent had the aura of the flowing evil sword seal. Mo Yuani had the flowing evil sword seal in his body, but it was not activated yet, so he was very familiar with the aura of the flowing evil sword seal. Ouyang Fu also had the same expression at this time. He looked at Nie Tian with a sluggish face. He felt the aura of the 9 evil sword seal in Nie Tian's sword intent. Mr. Ouyang, the power of the evil sword seal remains in your body. I'll help you force it out first, and then I'll explain everything to you. Nie Tian faintly smiled, then took a step forward and used the same method to force out the power of the evil sword seal in Ouyang Fu's body. The power in his body was the Sanxi sword vein, which was stronger than any of the Sanxi sword seals. Of course, he could force out the power of the evil sword seal. Phew! After doing all this, Nie Tian let out a long breath, and his expression became much more relaxed. Ouyang Fu's injuries were serious, but after Nie Tian's treatment, he was more than half healed. Then, Nie Tian told them about how he entered the Ghost King Palace's secret underground chamber, not hiding anything. You fused the Sanxi sword seal. Ouyang Fu and Mo Yuani exclaimed at the same time. The shock in their hearts was written on their faces. The two of them had never expected that Nie Tian would actually merge the 3 evil sword seals by chance. No wonder he could force out the power of the evil sword seal. Yes, Nie Tian nodded and said with a faint smile, the Ghost King Palace has a lot of secrets, and it's very strange inside. I wanted to save people, so I didn't have time to examine it carefully. Therefore, I don't know why the 3 evil sword seals that have been passed down from ancient times would be there. Mo Yuani and Ouyang Fu frowned, and their expressions changed again as if they were thinking about something. You two are from the 3 Evils clan. What do you think about the underground chamber in the Ghost King Palace? Nie Tian couldn't help but frown when he saw their reaction. Mo Yuani and Ouyang Fu looked at each other with hesitation. It was obvious that they had discovered something, but they didn't want to say it. Seeing this, Nie Tian didn't force them and only faintly smiled. Mr. Nie, it's actually nothing. At this time, he bitterly smiled and said, I feel that the secret underground chamber you entered is most likely the Sanxi ancestral grounds. The Sanxi ancestral grounds? Nie Tian was slightly startled and looked at Mo Yuani, waiting for the latter to continue. Mo Yuani glanced at Ouyang Fu, and the latter nodded. Then he said, the Sanxi ancestral grounds is the Sanxi clan's ancestral grounds. According to the Mo clan's ancient records, the Mo clan's ancestor obtained the flowing evil sword seal inheritance from the Sanxi ancestral grounds, and only then did the Mo clan reach its peak. The Ouyang clan also has the same records. The Ouyang clan's ancestor also obtained the 9 evil sword seal inheritance from the Sanxi ancestral grounds. Ouyang Fu's eyes slightly sank as he lightly said. Nie Tian's eyes flickered, and he immediately understood. It seemed that the Ji clan's ancestor also obtained the evil sword seal inheritance from the Sanxi ancestral grounds. Mo Yuani sighed and said, the 3 ancestors of the Mo clan, Ouyang clan, and Ji clan each obtained a sword seal inheritance, but each of them wanted to obtain the other 2 sword seals, so the 3 of them started a never-ending battle. After the death of the 3 ancestors, the 3 evils family became eternal enemies. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth slightly twitched. So the enmity between the Sanxi clan began because of the Sanxi ancestral grounds. In fact, the ancestors of the 3 clans each obtained 1 inheritance, and this was already the best ending. However, people were not satisfied and always wanted to obtain more power, which led to the tragedy of the Sanxi clan. The Sanxi ancestral grounds, I always thought it was just a legend, I didn't expect it to actually exist. Ouyang Fu looked at Nie Tian and laughed. Mr. Nie obtaining the Sangxi sword seal inheritance can be considered a good ending. Mo Yuani nodded, agreeing with Ouyang Fu. If Nie Tian did not appear, and the Ghost King Palace Master merged with the Sangxi sword seal inheritance, it would definitely be a disaster for the Mo and Ouyang clan. Chapter 1692. In the hall, Ouyang Fu and the others calmed down a lot and focused their attention on Nie Tian. Nie Tian looked at Ouyang Fu and Mo Yuani and said with a faint smile, Mr. Mo, Mr. Ouyang, it's now clear that the enmity between the two of you was orchestrated by the sect master of the Ghost King Palace. Now that the truth has been revealed, I think the Mo clan and the Ouyang clan don't need to be enemies anymore. Yes. Ouyang Fu nodded and then looked at Mo Yuani. Patriarch Mo, I represent the Ouyang family today to make peace with the Mo family. The Mo family and the Ouyang family are no longer enemies, but allies. What does Patriarch Mo think? Mo was stunned at first. Then his eyes flickered and he said excitedly, the Mo family is willing to ally with the Ouyang family. Good. Ouyang Fu and Mo Yuani stepped forward at the same time and high-fived. When Nie Tian saw this, the corners of his mouth curled up into a gratified smile. It was a wonderful thing to make two families that had been enemies for hundreds of thousands of years shake hands. At this time, Ouyang Fu suddenly took out a divine pill. Immediately, a surging aura filled the entire hall. A rank 9 divine pill. The moment the divine pill appeared, Nie Tian frowned and exclaimed in his heart. Although his current alchemy skills were not good enough, he was still an alchemist with amazing perception. He could sense the rank of the pill in Ouyang Fu's hand. Rank 9 divine pills were priceless items even in the upper realms. They were extremely precious. Ouyang Fu handed over the pill and said, Brother Mo, I seriously injured you back then. This is a rank 9 divine pill, the 7-fold profound spirit pill. After taking it, your injuries should recover in half a month. Thank you, Brother Ouyang. Mo Yuani's eyes trembled. He accepted the pill and thanked him. Putting away the pill, Mo Yuani looked at Mo Yanwei, who was still lying on the ground, and asked, Mr. Nie, is my second brother okay? He's not in danger. Nie Tian nodded slightly and said, but his 9 yuan meridians and all the meridians in his body are seriously injured. It will take at least a few months for him to recover. Thank you, Mr. Nie. Mo Yuani bowed deeply and sincerely expressed his gratitude. If it weren't for Nie Tian, Mo Yanwei might not have been able to escape this time. Nie Tian smiled faintly, then looked at Ouyang Fu and asked, Mr. Ouyang, how was the Ghost King Palace Lord? He injured me and Brother Mo, and he also suffered some injuries. I'm afraid he's already back at the Ghost King Palace. Ouyang Fu said solemnly, his eyes filled with terrifying killing intent. The Ghost King Palace Master killed his wife and son, making him his mortal enemy. How could he not be angry? Mr. Ouyang, please stay here for a day. Once I recover my strength, I will help you and Mr. Mo to open the sword seal in your body, Nie Tian said after thinking for a moment. He already had the tribal sword vein in his body and could help Ouyang Fu and the others open the sword seals in their bodies. When Ouyang Fu heard that Nie Tian wanted to help him open the sword seal, his eyes couldn't help but tremble with joy. Nie Tian didn't stay any longer. After leaving the hall, he first went to check on Rui Jince's condition, then returned to his room to cultivate. Rui Qinyu and Tawny were taken to Sun Luo City by Feng Buyu, but Nie Tian wasn't in a hurry to find them. Half a day later, Nie Tian walked out of his room. He had recovered to his peak state, and his whole body was as sharp as an unsheathed sword. When he came to the courtyard, Ouyang Fu and the others were already waiting for him. Mr. Ouyang, are you ready? Nie Tian walked over and looked at Ouyang Fu, who seemed to be a little nervous, and smiled faintly. Yes, please make your move, Mr. Nie. Ouyang Fu nodded, unable to hide his excitement. He was already a martial artist who was tens of thousands of years old, and had long passed the golden age for martial artists to improve their strength. He He thought that he would never have the chance to open the sword seal in his life, but he didn't expect that he would be able to open it now. Although it was already very late for Ouyang Fu to open the sword seal, it was still better than not opening it. It was still very helpful for improving his strength and swordsmanship. Most importantly, after Ouyang Fu opened the sword seal, he might be able to open the sword seal for other members of the Ouyang family in the future. Nietan nodded slightly, took a step forward, and the sword intent permeated from his body, directly enveloping Ouyang Fu. The sword intent surged around Ouyang Fu's body, emitting a strange sword hum. Ouyang Fu felt a reaction in his blood, as though it was boiling violently, and the hidden power in his blood was about to explode. Nietian controlled the sword intent and carefully sensed the changes in Ouyang Fu's body. The sword intent seeped into the latter's body, transforming into a stimulating force. After a while, Ouyang Fu felt the blood in his body surging crazily, as though it was about to rush out of his body. There was a faint layer of blood mist surrounding his body, and it looked extremely frightening. The sooner the sword seal was opened, the better, and the earlier, the easier it was. Ouyang Fu was old, and his strength was very strong. His sword intent greatly suppressed the power of his bloodline, so it was more difficult for him to open the sword seal. Mo Yuni and the others watched from the side, their eyes shining brightly, as though they were even more nervous than Yetian and Ouyang Fu. After a while, the blood mist around Ouyang Fu became thicker, and the air was filled with the smell of blood. His face was hideous, and it was obvious that he was in great pain. However, he did not make any sound, and instead endured it. 9 Evil Sword Seal, open. At this moment, the corners of Nie Tian's mouth twitched slightly, and he suddenly roared. Following which, a terrifying sword aura surged around Ouyang Fu, soaring into the sky with a majestic aura. After a long time, the sword aura disappeared into the sky. Ouyang Fu's tensed body relaxed, and he almost couldn't stand. Opening the sword seal at his age was too much of a burden on his martial body. If not for his strong martial body, his life might have been in danger. Mr. Ouyang, are you okay? Nie Tian stepped forward and wiped the beads of sweat from his forehead. His face was a little pale. I'm fine. Thank you for opening the sword seal for me, Mr. Nie. Ouyang Fu nodded, unable to hide the great joy on his face. He could feel that the 9 evil sword seal in his body had already been opened. With a faint smile, Nie Tian let out a long breath. He originally wanted to open the sword seal for Mo Yuni and Mo Yanwei, but it seemed that it was better not to. Mo Yuni and Mo Yanwei's strength was below Ouyang Fu's. If they forcefully opened the sword seal, their lives might be in danger. However, there was still one person whose sword seal must be opened, and that was Mo Lingshan. Shauna, are you ready? Nie Tian let out a long breath, looked at Mo Lingshan, and said with a faint smile, Yes. Mo Lingshan nodded heavily, but her young face was very determined. Nie Tian nodded with a smile, and once again released all the sword intent in his body, enveloping Mo Lingshan. Mo Lingshan was only 6 years old, the best age to open the sword seal. The process of opening the sword seal was very easy and smooth. Boom! After a while, Mo Lingshan's small body shook, and a sword aura rushed into the sky. Chapter 1693. The sword aura released by Mo Lingshan quickly dissipated in the air. However, everyone was surprised and looked at Mo Lingshan in disbelief. The sword aura just now was far inferior to the sword aura released by Ouyang Fu. However, Mo Lingshan was a beginner swordsman and was still stuck in the most basic realm of sword techniques. Under such circumstances, the sword seal could actually release such a powerful sword aura, which showed the strength of the sword seal in her body. This little girl, the flowing evil sword seal in her body, is even more terrifying than her sisters. When she grows up in the future, it is very likely that she will become a peak swordsman, Fat Cat said in a deep voice. Nie Tian frowned. Fat Cat rarely gave such a high evaluation of people, which meant that Mo Lingshan's talent was indeed very high. After helping Mo Lingshan open the sword seal, Nie Tian let out a long sigh of relief and was ready to leave. Mo Yuani looked at Nie Tian and said, "Mr. Nie, you snatched someone from the Ghost King Palace, so the Ghost King Palace Lord will definitely not let you go. Why not leave Sanluo Ghost Region first and settle accounts with the Ghost King Palace Lord after you improve your strength?" Mo Yuani firmly believed that as long as Nie Tian was given some time, the latter would definitely grow quickly, so there was really no need to continue to stay in Sanluo Ghost Region. Brother Mo is right. Ouyang Fu stepped forward and said, "Mr. Nie, with your talent, sooner or later you will definitely be able to trample on the Ghost King Palace Lord, so there is no need to rush revenge. If Mr. Nie doesn't mind, you can follow me back to Yangguan City first." Nie Tian looked at Mo Yuani and Ouyang Fu, smiled and said, "I appreciate your kindness, but I still have some things to deal with in Sanluo Ghost Region, so I can't leave now." Mo Yuani and Ouyang Fu looked at each other, not knowing what Nie Tian wanted to do, but since he didn't want to say, they didn't ask. Then Mo Yuani and Ouyang Fu each gave Nie Tian a token, which was the family head token of the Mo family and the Ouyang family. With the family head token, Nie Tian could go to Chiama City and Yangguan City, where the two families were located, to find them. "Mr. Nie, if there's anything you need our help with, please don't hesitate to ask," Ouyang Fu said sincerely. "Many thanks." Nie Tian smiled and put the two command medallions away. Mo Yuani and Ouyang Fu were going to take their people back first. Even if they continued to stay here, they would not be able to pose a threat to the Ghost King Palace Lord. Although Ouyang Fu hated the Ghost King Palace Lord, he was too weak to avenge his wife and son. It just so happened that Nie Tian had helped him activate the 9 Evil Sword Seal. He wanted to cultivate for a period of time and strive for a breakthrough in his strength before thinking about revenge. "Mr. Ouyang." Ouyang Fu was just about to leave when Nie Tian stopped him. "Sir, is there anything else?" Ouyang Fu looked at Nie Tian and frowned. Nie Tian thought for a while and finally said, "Ouyang Lingxie can't be trusted." When Ouyang Fu heard Nie Tian mention Ouyang Lingxie, his face darkened. He did not know why Nie Tian would suddenly mention Ouyang Lingxie. If anyone else had said this about Ouyang Lingxie, Ouyang Fu would definitely have turned hostile on the spot. However, Nie Tian was different. Nie Tian's words made him think carefully. "Brother Ouyang Lingxie is indeed suspicious. You must be wary of him." Mo Yuani stepped forward and said. Ouyang Fu's face darkened and said, "I understand." Nie Tian saw Ouyang Fu's reaction and smiled bitterly. It seemed that the latter did not believe him at all. Ouyang Fu doted on Ouyang Lingxie too much and trusted him too much. Not turning hostile on the spot was already giving Nie Tian a lot of face. "Sir, Ouyang Fu will take his leave." Ouyang Fu did not stay any longer. He bade farewell to Nie Tian and left. "Sir, Ouyang Fu and Ouyang Lingxie are father and son. It is normal that he does not want to suspect Ouyang Lingxie." Mo Yuani looked at Ouyang Fu's back and sighed. Nie Tian nodded slightly. He did not mind that Ouyang Fu did not believe him. He was just worried that Ouyang Fu would be in danger. However, he could not care too much now because he had many things to deal with. Then, Nie Tian left with Ruoyu and Junsu. Mo Yuani wanted to send a few Mo family's secret guards to protect Nie Tian, but the latter refused. With Nie Tian's current strength, as long as it was not a supreme god, he was not afraid. After leaving the Mo family's courtyard, Nie Tian looked at the Ghost King City. His eyes flashed, and he murmured, "The 7-leaf dragon's tongue orchid is not in my hands yet." Nie Tian had made a deal with Gue Shangquan and fulfilled the latter's conditions. However, things had developed far beyond Nie Tian's expectations. He had completely fallen out with the Ghost King Palace Master, so the latter would not give him the opposing blood pills recipe. Without the opposing blood pills recipe, it was impossible to get the 7-leaf dragon's tongue orchid from Gue Shangquan unless Nie Tian went to rob it. In fact, with Nie Tian's current strength, no one would be able to stop him if he went to the Ghost King Herb Orchid. However, He did not want to do so. It was too big of a target. Moreover, Ruiyu and Jun were by his side. Nietian, you don't need the 7-leaf dragon's tongue orchid. We can think of another way. Fat Cat's figure suddenly appeared and said with a smile. All right. Nietian smiled bitterly. This was the only way. Nietian no longer hesitated. He took Ruiyu and Jun Su and ran in the direction of Sun Luo City. Half an hour later, his figure appeared outside of Sun Luo City. I wonder how Rui Qinyu and the others are doing? Nietian looked at the majestic Sun Luo City, the corner of his mouth slightly raised as he murmured. He still had to deal with Sun Luo 7 Knights. He believed that the latter would take good care of Rui Qinyu and the others. Nietian brought Ruiyu and Jun Su into the city. He wanted to go directly to his Sun Luo Temple. On one hand, he had to confirm the safety of Rui Qinyu and Tawny. On the other hand, he had to help Ryu recover her divine sense as soon as possible. Nietian walked on the wide street. There were not many people around. Sun Luo City was obviously much more deserted than Ghost King City. As he walked, Nietian paid attention to everything around him. He was a little worried that people from Ghost King Palace would suddenly appear. At this moment, Nietian suddenly sensed several figures dashing in his direction. He couldn't help but furrow his brows and become slightly nervous. Nietian concealed his aura. When the figures came closer, his expression changed. He was shocked. One of the figures' aura was very familiar to Nietian. It was the elder of the inescapable net, Dugu Lingtian. Dugu Lingtian? Why is he here? Nietian frowned. He was puzzled. At the same time, he activated the holographic divine glyphs and carefully extended his divine sense towards Dugu Lingtian and the others. A few vague faces appeared in Nietian's mind as he spread his divine sense. One of them was extremely well hidden. His expression stiffened, and he almost exposed himself. This guy is Lian Jiufeng. Nietian's eyes flickered, but his face grew calm as he locked his soul sense on the aura. He exclaimed inwardly. Chapter 1694. Lian Jiufeng. Why is he here? Nietian locked onto the person's aura and was very sure that it was Lian Jiufeng. Nietian was not surprised that Lian Jiufeng was with Dugu Lingtian. Lian Jiufeng already knew a lot of things when he met him. It was not strange for him to find the inescapable net with his abilities. What confused Nietian was why Lian Jiufeng was here. Lian Jiufeng and Dugu Lingtian moved quickly. They did not notice Nietian. Since they hadn't discovered him, Nietian naturally wouldn't provoke them. Instead, he let them leave. Lian Jiufeng was a troublesome person. Nietian did not have the time to waste on him. Nietian did not think too much about it, and continued to walk toward Dark Azura Hall. A while later, Nietian arrived outside a towering palace. The corner of his lips curled up slightly. He murmured, I've finally arrived at Dark Azura Hall. The palace in front of Nietian was Dark Azura Hall. Nietian, you're here. A familiar voice rang before he stepped into Dark Azura Hall. Nietian looked up and saw a figure descending from the giant city walls. It was Feng Buyu. Big brother Feng. Nietian smiled when he saw Feng Buyu. Since Feng Buyu had appeared in Dark Azura Hall, it meant that Rui Qinyu and Tawny had come to Dark Azura Hall as well. As long as they were in Dark Azura Hall, even the palace master of the Ghost King Palace would not be a threat. Obviously, Wen Buyu had been waiting for Nietian's arrival. He smiled and said, You've escaped from the Ghost King Palace. Amen. Nietian nodded with a smile and asked, Are my friends all right? Don't worry, they're fine. I'll take you to them right now. Feng Buyu said and led the way. Nietian and Ruiyu followed closely behind Feng Buyu. With Feng Buyu leading the way, Nietian and the others did not encounter any obstacles along the way. The architecture and layout of the Sun Luo Hall were very similar to the Ghost King Palace. They both exuded an ancient aura and were probably palaces from the ancient times. Soon, Nietian and the others arrived at a beautifully decorated courtyard. Nietian, your friend is inside. Feng Buyu smiled faintly and spoke to Nietian. Then his silhouette flashed and he left. Nietian didn't bother with Feng Buyu. After all, this was Dark Azura Hall, and the latter was much more familiar with the place than he was. Nyetian, you're back. As soon as Nyetian entered the courtyard, a nervous and excited voice rang out. Immediately after, a beautiful silhouette appeared. Standing there, she was like a snow lotus on an ice mountain, so beautiful that it caused people to feel suffocated. Rui Qinyu. Nyetian looked at Rui Qinyu and smiled faintly. Although he had seen Rui Qinyu before, Nyetian's mood was different now that he saw her again. At least, he didn't have to be so nervous. At this time, Rui Qinyu saw Rui Qinyu next to Nyetian. Her beautiful eyes flashed, and she stepped forward and asked nervously, Rui Qinyu, how is Rui Qinyu? He's fine for now. Nyetian nodded and told her about Rui Qinyu's situation. Then he said, if we want him to recover his soul, we need Tawny to help him remove the mark of dusk. How is Tawny? Nyetian suddenly thought of Tawny and asked anxiously. Big Brother Feng brought a divine alchemist to see him. Little Li and the child are fine. The child will be born in 2 days. Rui Qinyu nodded slightly and suddenly looked at Nyetian. She solemnly said, thank you, Nyetian. We're friends. There's no need to thank me. Nyetian smiled faintly. He didn't notice that when Rui Qinyu said those words, her eyes were surging with a strange radiance. Next, Nyetian made arrangements for Rui Qinyu and went to check on Tawny. After confirming that the latter was fine, he felt much more relaxed. In the small courtyard, Nyetian and Rui Qinyu were sitting on a stone platform. They smiled at each other, but didn't say anything. Qinyu, you're now a late-stage mid-god. You must have experienced a lot during this period of time, right? Nyetian broke the silence and said lightly. The last time he saw Rui Qinyu, it was in the Shumi world. It was in the snowfield ice field. Rui Qinyu had fused with the desolate inheritance left behind by the desolate demon monarch. Then, she went to the depths of the snowfield ice field alone. Nyetian remembered that Rui Qinyu had awakened 3 pupils at that time. The blue pupil, the red pupil, and the black pupil. When he saw Rui Qinyu again, she had already awakened 5 pupils. Moreover, Nyetian could clearly sense that Rui Qinyu's mentality seemed to have changed. She was no longer as cold as before. Rui Qinyu nodded slightly and told him what she had experienced during this period of time. It turned out that after she parted ways with Nyetian, she went to the depths of the snowfield ice field. Then, by a stroke of luck, she entered an alternate dimension from the primordial times. Later, she awakened her purple pupils and ascended to the divine realm. After that, the alternate dimension became unstable and she came to the Senra ghost realm through a space-time vortex. She only met Ryu, Zhen Su, and Tawny after she came to the Senra ghost realm. Nyetian nodded slightly. He had never seen Rui Qinyu speak so much at one time. It seemed that her recent experiences had changed her a lot. The current Rui Qinyu had awakened 5 pupils. The red pupil, the blue pupil, the black pupil, the purple pupil, and the green pupil. Nyetian was very curious about Rui Qinyu's current combat strength. He estimated that if Rui Qinyu awakened all 5 pupils, even he might not be a match for her without using the 3 forbidden skills. However, Nyetian knew that although Rui Qinyu had awakened all 5 pupils, her martial body was too weak. Coupled with the power of Blood Devour, she could not awaken all 5 pupils at the same time. What about you, Nyetian? What have you been through during this period of time? Rui Qinyu smiled faintly and took the initiative to ask. Nyetian sighed softly and did not hide anything. He told her about his own experience, as well as what happened to Mo Rushi and Cher. Rui Qinyu listened very carefully. She did not expect Nyetian's background to be so complicated. She was also surprised by what happened to Mo Rushi and Cher. This is my current situation. It's not good. Nyetian smiled bitterly after he finished speaking, but his expression was a little more relaxed. He had been suppressing these things in his heart and had never mentioned them to anyone. Now that someone was willing to listen to him talk about it, he felt a lot more relaxed. Rui Qinyu nodded slightly and said, Nyetian, I believe in you. You will definitely overcome all the difficulties. Thank you. Tian smiled faintly. The burden on his shoulders was very heavy, but he inexplicably felt a lot more relaxed in his heart. Then, the two talked for a long time before they separated. In Tian's memory, this was the first time he had a long talk with Rui Qinyu. Although the two of them had many interactions in the past, Rui Qinyu was too cold and always kept people at a distance. Therefore, the two of them rarely talked to each other. Tian returned to his room with a faint smile on his face. He was sincerely happy that Rui Qinyu could have such a change. At this time, Fat Cat suddenly appeared and chuckled. Little Nya, your luck with women is really good. Even I'm a little jealous. Tian was stunned for a moment and quickly explained, Qinya and I are just friends. Friends can also continue to develop. Fat Cat smiled again and stroked his long beard. You are really not simple. A sage body, a 3 lives meridian, and a rainbow pupils. Why do all the good girls in the world fall for you? Chapter 1695. 3 days later, in the small courtyard, Tian sat at the stone table, and True Serene sat across from him. With a burning gaze, Tian looked at Ruoyu and asked tentatively, Ruoyu, do you remember who I am? Rain's gaze was a little sluggish, but compared to a few days ago, it was much better. Tawny had helped him remove the scar of dusk, and the residual heart-soul-seal curse in his body was slowly disappearing. His divine sense was slowly becoming clearer. Unfortunately, Raindrop's memory was recovering very slowly. She only remembered Tawny and Rui Qinyu, but not Tian. This was actually normal. In Raindrop's eyes, Tawny and Rui Qinyu were definitely more important than Tian. I don't remember. Raindrop shook her head and said lightly. Tian let out a soft sigh, a helpless expression on his face. Although the scar of dusk in his divine sense has been removed, the negative effects of the residual heart-soul-seal curse are still there. His divine sense has not completely recovered. Fat Cat appeared on Tian's shoulder and said with a frown, even if his divine sense recovers, how much of his memory will he be able to recover is still unknown. Tian shook his head and smiled bitterly. It seemed that he was too optimistic about Raindrop's situation. Originally, he thought that as long as the Scar of Dusk was formed, Raindrop would be able to recover completely. He's already not bad. He still remembers some people. Fat Cat looked very satisfied and said, based on his current condition, he should be able to recover 70% to 80% of his memory. Only the deepest memories can't be recovered. Fat, when will his divine sense be completely awakened? Tian nodded and asked. Raindrop was still a little muddle-headed now. His divine sense was a little blurred. 1 month at the earliest, 3 months at the slowest. The Fat Cat raised her eyebrows and said, the negative effects of the residual heart soul-sealing curse won't disappear so easily. After saying that, the Fat Cat's figure moved and she returned to the origin fetus space. Tian caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of his eyes and exclaimed, Fat, you have 3 tails. He suddenly realized that the Fat Cat had grown a 3rd tail. It's only 3. I'm still far from 9, Fat Cat responded snappily. Obviously, she was very dissatisfied with her growth rate. However, Tian felt that this rate of growth was already very fast. After all, it hadn't been long since the Fat Cat left the glazed demon pagoda. The reason why Fat Cat was able to grow so fast was all thanks to Tian's fiend god nascent embryo. Without the nourishment of the fiend god's power, it would have been impossible for him to grow so fast. Tian's current strength was at the peak of the mid-god stage. There were signs that he would break through to the high god stage. He had awakened 16 of the 9,000 fiend gods' power. The 16 fiend gods' power wasn't very strong, but it had an absolute suppressive effect on certain kinds of power. In a critical moment, it would often play a crucial role. Tian. At this moment, Rui Qinyu walked out with Tawny standing behind her. She was holding a baby in her arms. It was her and Raindrop's child. Tian stood up and looked at the two of them. He smiled faintly and walked over. When he saw that the baby had fallen asleep, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. He imagined how he would feel when his own child was born. Fanner, Rua Jean Su saw Hu Shaoli coming out, and his face revealed a happy expression, and he called out in pleasant surprise. His and Tani's child was named Raindrop. The two hoped that the child would be ordinary. Nietian looked at Raindrop. It was hard to associate the person in front of him with the previous Raindrop. Maybe Raindrop's consciousness was still recovering, or maybe she was too excited after becoming a father. Nietian. At this moment, Feng Buyu's figure suddenly appeared outside the small courtyard. Brother Feng. Nietian saw Feng Buyu and could faintly guess that Sunluo 7 Nights was looking for him. He had been in Sunluo Temple for 3 days. During this time, Sunluo 7 Nights didn't appear, which gave Nietian a rare few days of leisure. Little Seven is looking for you. Feng Buyu smiled faintly and didn't enter the small courtyard. I'll be right there. Nietian nodded slightly and turned around to leave. At this moment, Feng Buyu opened his mouth again and said, Miss Raindrop, please come with us. Me too. Rui Qinyu frowned slightly and seemed a little surprised. Nietian frowned and looked at Feng Buyu. Brother Feng, I alone am enough. Qinyu doesn't need to go. Feng Buyu thought for a moment and said, If Miss Raindrop doesn't go, Little Seven will probably be angry. Nietian frowned, and his face couldn't help but become gloomy. Feng Buyu's words were obviously threatening. Nietian, I'll go with you. Rui Qinyu saw this and gently grabbed Nietian's hand and smiled faintly. She didn't want Nietian to have a conflict with Sunluo Temple because of her. Nietian thought for a moment and finally nodded in agreement. He had a deal with Sunluo 7 Nights, but he didn't want Rui Qinyu to be involved. He could vaguely guess that what Sunluo 7 Nights wanted him to do next wouldn't be simple. After a short while, Nietian, Rain, and Thousand Leaves arrived at the Sunluo Palace. A tall and sturdy figure was standing at the top of the palace. His aura was vast and boundless like the sea, causing people to look up to him in awe. You're here, Nietian. Sunluo 7 Nights slowly turned around, a faint smile appearing at the corner of his mouth as he looked at Nietian with a burning gaze. Hall Lord, Nietian replied coolly, but when he sensed Sunluo 7 Nights with his divine sense, his eyes couldn't help but tremble. He could sense that Sunluo 7 Nights had reached the early paramount god level, and his aura was several times stronger than before. The last time Nietian saw Sunluo 7 Nights, he was still a peak over god. But in just a few days, he had reached the paramount god level. It seemed that the Sunluo medallion had played a key role in Sunluo 7 Nights' advancement. I didn't expect you to barge into the Ghost King Palace, Nietian, Sunluo 7 Nights said with a faint smile. He looked Nietian up and down with a strange look in his eyes. Inwardly, he was shocked by Nietian's sudden increase in strength. He was even more convinced that it had been a wise decision to make a deal with Nietian. Nietian and Win Biu had barged into the Ghost King Palace and rescued Rui Qinyu. That had surprised Sunluo 7 Nights greatly. He had fulfilled his promise to help Nietian save Rui Qinyu, and now it was time for Nietian to help him. Hall Lord, let's get down to business. He didn't want to beat around the bush with Sunluo 7 Nights. It was better to be simple and direct. All right, Sunluo 7 Nights nodded with a smile and said, What I want you to do next is actually very simple. Enter a different space and participate in a forbidden hunt. Alternate dimension? Forbidden hunt? Nietian frowned at Sunluo 7 Nights' words. He couldn't help but feel nervous. The more relaxed Sunluo 7 Nights sounded, the more complicated the matter was. Chapter 1696. In Sunluo Hall, Nietian's brows furrowed when he heard Sunluo 7 Nights mention the alternate dimension and the forbidden hunt. He glanced at Rui Qinyu with a gloomy gaze. Originally, this matter had nothing to do with Rui Qinyu, but Sunluo 7 Nights asked Rui Qinyu to come to Sunluo Hall. It was obvious that this was premeditated. Nietian guessed that Sunluo 7 Nights wanted Rui Qinyu to participate in the alternate dimension's forbidden hunt. Thinking of this, Nietian's expression became gloomy. He knew that this forbidden hunt would be extremely dangerous, so he didn't want Rui Qinyu to take the risk. Sir Temple Lord, what do you want me to do? Just say it. Nie Tian frowned and stared at Sunluo's 7 knights with a cold expression. Nie Tian, do you know what kind of place the Sunluo ghost domain is? Unexpectedly, Sunluo's 7 knights didn't say it directly and asked. The Sunluo ghost domain is a forbidden area of the God-stunning domain. Nie Tian was stunned for a moment before replying. The God-stunning domain? Sunluo's 7 knights looked at Nie Tian with a strange smile and said, the Sunluo ghost domain doesn't belong to the God-stunning domain. Haven't you noticed? The space-time of the Sunluo ghost domain is even more stable than the God-stunning domain. Nie Tian frowned and couldn't help but ponder. He did notice that the space-time of the Sunluo ghost domain was a bit strange. It was much more stable than the God-stunning domain, comparable to the upper realms. However, there were many space-time vortexes in the sky above this space-time. They were all space-time gates that led to unknown areas. Moreover, what puzzled Nie Tian was that the 2 major forces of the Sunluo ghost domain, Sunluo Temple and Ghost King Palace, were far stronger than the 12 palaces of the God-stunning domain. With their strength, why would they stay in a place like the Sunluo ghost domain? They could easily enter the God-stunning domain and compete with the 12 palaces. Nie Tian, the Sunluo ghost region is far more complicated than what you see. The corners of Sunluo, 7 knights' lips curled into a strange smile as he said, the Sunluo ghost region is connected to countless worlds. There are many alternate dimensions that have existed since ancient times. Not only do these alternate dimensions contain many secrets that would drive cultivators crazy, but there are also many mysterious forces within them. You won't be able to find another place like this even in the 9 realms. After saying that, Limitless 7 Knights looked at Nie Tian with a playful smile. Nie Tian frowned. He didn't expect that there were so many secrets hidden in the Shinra Ghost region. Dark Azura Hall and Ghost King Palace controlled the Sunluo Ghost domain and were unwilling to leave. So it turned out that it was because of those ancient alternate dimensions. Nie Tian, do you know how big the Sunluo Ghost domain was hundreds of thousands of years ago? Sunluo's 7 Knights suddenly laughed and asked again. Nie Tian shook his head. I don't know. Sunluo's 7 Knights smiled faintly and said, hundreds of thousands of years ago, the Sunluo Ghost domain was only a few thousand miles in circumference. Now, it's over 50,000 miles in circumference. Its territory has increased by more than 10 times. Furthermore, it didn't occupy the God-shocking domain space. Instead, it expanded its own space. Nie Tian frowned. He was shocked. The space of the Sunluo Ghost domain was indeed strange. It could expand on its own. Lore Hall Master, you must have a reason for telling me all this. Just say it. Nie Tian took a deep breath and asked Sunluo's 7 Knights. These things were most likely the secrets of the Sunluo Ghost domain. Sunluo's 7 Knights definitely wouldn't tell Nie Tian for nothing. Nie Tian, what I want to tell you is that above the Sunluo Ghost domain is a space-time ocean that leads to countless worlds. There is a space-time gate that leads to an alternate dimension, the Forbidden Land of Martial Arts. What I want you to do is to enter the Forbidden Land of Martial Arts and participate in the 9 Infant Forbidden Hunt. Sunluo's 7 Knights did not beat around the bush and spoke in a deep voice. Forbidden Land of Martial Arts? The 9 Infant Forbidden Hunt? Nie Tian frowned as he pondered Sunluo's 7 Knights' words. The Forbidden Land of Martial Arts was the alternate dimension's name, and the 9 Infant Forbidden Hunt was the hunting competition that Nie Tian wanted to participate in. The Forbidden Land of Martial Arts is an alternate dimension from the immemorial era. It is a world of a higher level than the upper realms. Sunluo's 7 Knights knew that Nie Tian had a lot of questions in his mind. With a faint smile, he said, the Sunluo Ghost Realm is actually a subsidiary world of the Forbidden Land of Martialism, just like how the God-stunning realm has many subsidiary worlds. The Forbidden Land of Martial Arts is normally closed, and cultivators from subsidiary worlds are forbidden from entering. However, every 10,000 years, the Forbidden Land of Martial Arts will open once. Open. Nietian was taken aback. He said, "It's for the 9-infant forbidden hunt, right?" He had more or less understood. The forbidden land of martial arts was a world of a higher level than realms. The Sunluo Ghost Domain was only a subsidiary world of the forbidden land of martial arts, just like how the Heaven Realm and God Realm were subsidiaries of the God Shocking Domain. Similarly, just like how the cultivators from the Heaven Realm and God Realm all wanted to enter realms, the cultivators from the Sunluo Ghost Domain also wanted to enter the forbidden land of martial arts. Unfortunately, the gate of time and space to enter the forbidden land of martial arts was closed. It would only open once every 10,000 years. As for why the forbidden land of martial arts would open, it was definitely because of the 9-infant forbidden hunt. Yes, Sunluo 7 Knights nodded and said, "The forbidden land of martial arts is ruled by a powerful force, the 9-infant heaven. The 9-infant forbidden hunt is organized by the 9-infant heaven. When a 9-infant forbidden hunt begins, the 9-infant heaven will select 18 subsidiary worlds from the countless subsidiary worlds and allow 10 cultivators from each world to enter the forbidden land of martial arts to participate in the 9-infant forbidden hunt." "I understand." Nietian smiled faintly and immediately reacted. He said, "The Sunluo Ghost Domain has been selected for the 9-infant forbidden hunt this time, right?" Sunluo 7 Knights nodded with a smile and said, "The Sunluo Ghost Domain is the lucky winner of the 9-infant forbidden hunt this time. The Sunluo Hall and the Ghost King Palace each have 5 quotas to enter the forbidden land of martial arts." Nietian's eyebrows furrowed as his face darkened. The Sunluo Ghost Domain had 10 quotas. The Ghost King Palace and the Sunluo Hall each had 5 quotas. This was also the reason why Sunluo 7 Knights asked Rui Qinyu to come here. He wanted Rui Qinyu to participate in the 9-infant forbidden hunt. Nietian did not know what the conditions to participate in the 9-infant forbidden hunt were, but his first reaction was, Rui Qinyu could not participate in the 9-infant forbidden hunt because it was too dangerous. The Sunluo Ghost Domain was only a subsidiary world of the forbidden land of martial arts. Who knew how powerful the other subsidiary worlds were? Seeing Nietian's nervous reaction, Sunluo 7 Knights nodded with a smile and said, "Nietian, the 9-infant forbidden hunt only allows warriors below the age of 10,000 to participate. So, you're the best candidate. As for Lady Ryu, she will not participate." Before Sunluo 7 Knights could finish, Nietian interrupted him. "Don't rush to make a decision. Let me finish first." Sunluo 7 Knights was not angry at being interrupted by Nietian. Instead, he laughed and said, "Lady Ryu has the rainbow pupils. If she participates in the 9-infant forbidden hunt, she will have a huge advantage." "So what?" Nietianling replied coldly. He did not care what advantages Rui Qinyu had. He just did not want her to take the risk. Chapter 1697. Power of Blood Devour. Nietian's eyes trembled when he heard Sunluo 7 Knights mention the power of Blood Devour. Rui Qinyu had opened her 5th pupil. The power of Blood Devour was in a berserk state and was constantly devouring her blood energy. Nietian didn't know how to get rid of the 9-colored pupil's blood power for good. After calming down, Nietian asked in a deep voice, "Sectmaster, what are you trying to say?" Although the 9-infant forbidden hunt is cruel, the winner can make a request to the 9-infant heaven. Sunluo 7 Knights smiled strangely and looked at Nietian with an evil gaze. 200,000 years ago, the Sunluo Ghost region was chosen by the 9-infant heaven. I was fortunate enough to participate in the 9-infant forbidden hunt. There, I once met a martial artist with 7 pupils and 9 colored pupils. 7 pupils. Hearing Sunluo 7 Knights' words, Nietian's eyes trembled and his expression became shocked. Other than Rui Qinyu, Nietian had never seen a martialist with 3 pupils and 9 pupils. He could not believe that there was someone in this world who could open 7 pupils. "Hall Master, are you serious?" Nietian frowned and his face darkened. Sunluo 7 Knights is not someone who speaks without thinking. Sunluo 7 Knights' face darkened and he said coldly, Nietion could not help but fall silent. With Sun Luo 7-Night status, he would not lie. When I saw that martialist with 9 pupils, I did not sense the power of Blood Devour on him. Therefore, I guess that he must know a way to resolve the power of Blood Devour. If Miss Rain participates in the 9-headed infant forbidden hunt and wins, she can make a request for the people of the 9-headed infant heaven to help her completely dispel the power of the Blood Devour, Sun Luo 7 Nights said solemnly when he saw Nietion hesitating. Nietion's eyes flickered. He could not make a decision. The 9-infant forbidden hunt was both a crisis and an opportunity for Rui Qinyu. I'm in. At this moment, Rui Qinyu suddenly took a step forward and said with determination in her eyes, Rui. Nietion was stunned. He didn't expect Rui Qinyu to make a decision so quickly. Nietion, this is an opportunity for me. I can't give it up. Rui Qinyu looked at Nietion. Her lips curved into a gentle smile as she spoke. Nietion nodded. Since Rui Qinyu had made up her mind, he couldn't stop her. Very good. Sun Luo 7 Nights smiled faintly, his eyes flashing with intense joy. Nietion reckoned that if the Jiao Ying Forbidden Hunt won, Sun Luo 7 Nights would definitely benefit greatly. Otherwise, the latter wouldn't be so happy. Hall Master, please tell us the rules of the 9 infants hunting prohibition. Nietion became cold, and his expression was much calmer. The 9 infants hunting prohibition. Everyone is a hunter, and everyone is also a prey. Sun Luo 7 Nights' lips twitched as he said, the 9 infants hunting prohibition does not target others, but everyone who participates except you. Nietion frowned, and his expression darkened. He said, isn't this forcing all participants to kill each other? Yes. Sun Luo 7 Nights nodded and said, the 9 infants hunting prohibition has no time limit. When there are only 9 participants left, the 9 infants hunting prohibition will automatically end. The 9 people who survive will be the victors of the 9 infants hunting prohibition. I see. Nietion nodded slightly. It turned out that the 9-infant forbidden hunt was a blatant massacre between martial artists. The 9 infants hunting prohibition only allows warriors below the age of 10,000 to participate. However, all the participants are the top geniuses from the affiliated worlds of the forbidden land of martialism. Therefore, most of them are at the level of Overgod, and there might even be powerful experts. Sun Luo 7 Nights reminded Nietion. Nietion's gaze trembled as he agreed with him. There were indeed very few warriors who reached the paramount realm before the age of 10,000. Nietion's father, Nie Fenghua, reached the paramount realm before the age of 10,000. His 6th uncle, Nie Fiyu, might also reach the paramount realm before the age of 10,000. However, Nie Fenghua and Nie Fiyu were the top geniuses of the Wind and Cloud Alliance. Even in the 9 major realms, there were very few who could compare to them. There were very few paramount gods below the age of 10,000, but that did not mean there were none. There might be such a warrior in the 9 infants hunting prohibition. Why me and Rui Qinyu? Nietion asked with a frown. With his and Rui Qinyu's strength, they would definitely be at the bottom of the 9 infants hunting prohibition. However, Sun Luo 7 Nights was very confident in them. It was a little strange, because you too have an advantage over other warriors. Sun Luo 7 Nights smiled strangely and said, the 9 infants hunting prohibition is in the 9 infants mountain range. The entire mountain range is enveloped by a powerful martial arts restriction. Under the restriction, warriors cannot use their Yuan meridians or godheads. Nietion was stunned. He then blurted out, doesn't that mean that the battle between warriors can only be decided by the strength of their martial body? Not being able to use their Yuan meridians or godheads meant that warriors could not use martial skills. They could not even use their Yuan meridians or spirit power. They could only use the purest power of their martial body. Yes. Sun Luo 7 Nights smiled faintly. He looked at Nietion with bright eyes and said, Nietion, although you only have the strength of a peak middle god, your martial body is much stronger than other warriors of the same level. It is definitely not weaker than an ordinary overgod. Nietian nodded slightly. His martial body was indeed very strong. The supreme dragon vein, the power of 600 billion stars, the fiend god origin embryo, the three great forbidden skills, and the three evil sword vein made his martial body unbelievably strong. At this moment, Sunluo's 7 knights looked at Rui Qinyu and said, Rui Qinyu has the 9 color pupils. Although she cannot use her Yuan meridians or godheads, her 9 color pupils are not restricted. Therefore, she has a greater advantage than you. This, Nietian's expression stiffened, and he couldn't help but gasp. Rui Qinyu's 9 color pupils were not restricted. This was very terrifying in the 9 infants hunting prohibition. Even the current Nietian could not fight against Rui Qinyu's 9 color pupils without using his dragon vein and demonic aura. From the looks of it, Rui Qinyu indeed had a great advantage in participating in the 9 infants hunting prohibition. After a while, Nietian's expression returned to normal, and he asked, My lord, when will the 9 infants hunting prohibition start? In 5 days. Sunluo's 7 knights smiled faintly. Nietian nodded slightly and was about to leave. Wait a moment. You still have to meet a few people. Sunluo's 7 knights stopped Nietian. Then, he looked out of the hall and said, They're here. Nietian's gaze froze. He looked outside the hall and saw 3 figures walking towards the hall. Who were they? Nietian looked at the 3 figures and asked in a deep voice. Your companions. Sunluo's 7 knights replied with a smile. These 3 figures were the people who were going to participate in the 9 infants hunting prohibition with Nietian and Rui Qinyu. The 3 figures were getting closer. They were 2 men and 1 woman. The 3 of them maintained a certain distance from each other. It seemed like they did not know each other. Chapter 1698. The handsome young man stared at Nietian in disdain. He did not hide his disdain at all. His voice was very loud, but it was extremely ear-piercing as it rang through the hall. The other man and woman looked at Nietian and Rui Qinyu. They also showed disdain in their eyes. Nietian looked at the 3 of them. They were not very old, probably around a few thousand years old. They all seemed very young. The 3 of them were very powerful. They were all overgods. The handsome young man who spoke first was a late overgod. The cold woman in violet was a mid-overgod, and the skinny young man was also a mid-overgod. They were indeed talented to be able to possess such strength at such a young age. Nietian, Rui Qinyu, let me introduce you. These are your companions, Jiang Qiji, Chen Ruoyi, and Gue Wuchan. Sunluo's 7 knights sensed the disdain the 3 of them showed towards Nietian and Rui Qinyu, but he acted like he knew nothing and introduced them enthusiastically. Nietian's eyes sank slightly. He had never thought that Sunluo's 7 knights would have already chosen the other 3. The 3 of them were indeed much more powerful than Nietian and Rui Qinyu. Companions? The handsome young man, Jiang Qiji, smiled cold. He looked at Nietian scornfully and said, Do I need a piece of trash who's a god as a companion? Nietian's eyes narrowed slightly as a sliver of darkness flashed across his face. He said nothing. He only stared at Jiang Qiji cold. Trash, do you not accept it? Jiang Qiji sensed the coldness in Nietian's eyes, but he sneered instead. The disdain in his eyes grew. Nietian scanned past Jiang Qiji with the senses of his soul. Afterwards, he sensed a familiar presence. His lips twitched, and he said, You're from the Jiang family? Jiang family. Nietian was talking about the Xingtian Alliance's Jiang family. Nietian had fought with the Jiang family back in the god-shepherding domain, so he remembered the Jiang family's Xingtian bloodline. The Jiang Qiji in front of him actually had a very powerful Xingtian bloodline in his body. Clearly, he was a member of the Jiang clan. The Xingtian bloodline was one of the 4 supreme ancient bloodlines. It greatly enhanced a cultivator's martial body. It was normal for Sunluo's 7 knights to look for the Jiang family. Nietian guessed that Jiang Qiji should be from a branch of the Jiang family. It had to be said that Jiang Qiji's talent was very good. With his strength, it was enough for him to enter the main house. You don't deserve to know. Jiang Qiji smiled cold and arrogant. Nye Tian's face suddenly turned cold and gloomy. Can it be that a piece of god trash wants to fight against me? Jiang Qiji stared cold at Nye Tian, his eyes filled with extreme disdain. In his eyes, Nye Tian was just an ant, a piece of trash. He really didn't understand why Sanluo's 7 Knights would look for such a person to participate in the 9-infant forbidden hunt. Some mad dogs will bite if they are not taught a lesson. Nye Tian's expression was as cold as steel. He raised his eyes and looked at Sanluo's 7 Knights. Jiang Qiji was, after all, someone found by Sanluo's 7 Knights. Therefore, it was better to ask for his opinion. Since the two of you want to have a spar, I have no objections. Sanluo's 7 Knights smiled faintly and said, but you both know the rules of the 9-infant forbidden hunt. Why don't the two of you use your origin veins and divine sparks? What do you think? Fine. Before Sanluo's 7 Knights' voice faded away, Jiang Qiji let out a low roar. Then, his figure flashed and landed outside the hall. Nye Tian couldn't help but smile. Sanluo's 7 Knights was helping him. If it was a direct battle, Nye Tian would definitely have to use some tricks to defeat Jiang Qiji. But if it was just a competition of martial physique, Nye Tian wasn't afraid at all. Then, everyone left the main hall and went outside. Nye Tian and Jiang Qiji landed on the square of the main hall and stood facing each other. Nye Tian, I want to see how strong your martial physique is. Sanluo's 7 Knights smirked and thought to himself. Rui Qinyu's pretty face was nervous. She couldn't help but worry for Nye Tian. The other two, Chen Ruoyi and Gue Wuchan, looked playful. They were waiting to see a good show. In their opinion, Nye Tian and Jiang Qiji's battle was simply courting death. A middle god wanting to compete with a main god in martial physique was no different from hitting a rock with an egg. Trash. If I don't beat the sh*t out of you today, I'll consider it as you shitting your pants. Jiang Qiji stared coldly at Nye Tian and bellowed furiously. He wanted to use his battle with Nye Tian to establish his prestige. Only after entering the forbidden land of martialism could he become the leader of the 5. You want to make an example out of me? Nye Tian looked at Jiang Qiji. He could tell what the latter was thinking with a single glance. Jiang Qiji wanted to continue suppressing him to establish his prestige. Unfortunately, between Nye Tian and Jiang Qiji, it wasn't certain who would be the one to be killed. I'll take your life with one punch. In the next moment, Jiang Qiji suddenly moved. He charged madly at Nye Tian. Every step he took would leave a deep hole in the ground. Overgod martial artists were already extremely powerful after being strengthened by the laws of overgods. Just a casual punch from them was enough to split mountains and shatter rocks. Nye Tian sensed Jiang Qiji's wild presence, but his face was completely sunken. He did not show any emotions at all. Jiang Qiji possesses the Xingtian bloodline. Although he's only a late overgod, his martial body is even more terrifying than peak overgods. This kid is only a middle god. He'll definitely die from that punch. Gue Wuchan could not help but smile when he saw Jiang Qiji charge over. He said sinisterly, "Yeah." The light in Chenruoi's eyes flickered as she nodded. In their opinion, it was impossible for Nye Tian to receive Jiang Qiji's punch. In the next moment, just when Jiang Qiji's punch was about to land on Nye Tian's face, the latter suddenly punched out to receive it. Bang! In a single instance, the two fists collided, and the sound of metal colliding rang out. Afterwards, there was the terrifying sound of bones breaking, and a figure was directly blown away amidst a flash of blood. He shrieked miserably in the air. At that moment, everyone frowned. They all stared at the square as disbelief and shock filled their faces. The person on the ground was none other than Jiang Qiji. One of his fists was dripping with blood and completely deformed. Even his white bones were exposed. On the other hand, Nye Tian remained where he was. He was unscathed. How was this possible? Jiang Qiji had punched out first, yet he had been sent flying by a single punch from Nye Tian. Even his fist had shattered. If they had not witnessed it with their own eyes, they would have never believed it. This Sunluo's 7 knights sucked in a breath of cold air. He felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that Nie Tian's martial body was strong, but he didn't expect it to be this strong. He had defeated a late over-god with the Xingtian bloodline in a single punch. Nie Tian's martial body was terrifyingly powerful. At this moment, Nie Tian took a step forward and arrived beside Jiang Qiji. He glanced past him coldly and said, "You said I'm trash, yet you can't even block a single punch from me. I don't think I need to say who's trash now, do I?" With that, Nie Tian turned around and left. He could not even be bothered to look at Jiang Qiji. Jiang Qiji had been defeated by a single punch from Nie Tian. It was obvious who was trash. Jiang Qiji looked at Nie Tian's back as his eyes trembled violently. Fury surged within him. Chapter 1699. Boom. Up in midair, Jiang Qiji's fist smashed down towards Nie Tian with the momentum of a mountain. He was defeated by Nie Tian with a single punch and Nie Tian's merciless mockery. He lost his mind and wanted to kill Nie Tian directly. He didn't expect Nie Tian's martial body to be so strong. He couldn't compete with it all. Heaven's punishment armor. Gue Wukong and Shenruoi exclaimed when they saw the armored giant around Jiang Qiji. The armored giant surrounding Jiang Qiji surged with a surging power that filled the air, emitting a powerful and oppressive aura. No one expected Jiang Qiji to be so vicious. He went against Sunluo Chie's words and directly used his primordial meridian and godhead to kill Nie Tian. Jiang Qiji was in the air, but there was a sinister smile on his face. He didn't think that Nie Tian could block his punch. Right at this moment, Nie Tian's body shook, and a terrifying sword aura soared into the sky. The sword radiance bloomed 10,000 meters away, and the surging sword intent was like a raging sea, blasting towards the sky. Boom! A loud sound was heard. The fist shadow and the sword shadow collided. The terrifying power collided and exploded in all directions. Chi, chi, chi. An ear-piercing sound was heard. Waves of violent chi surged in the air. It was extremely terrifying. Nie Tian's body trembled slightly. He took a few steps back, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Jiang Qiji's figure froze in the air, and he looked at him with a face full of horror. His eyes were filled with extreme disbelief. He didn't expect that Nie Tian could block his punch. He had activated the heaven punishing armor. This punch of his was powerful enough to shatter a mountain range. How could Nie Tian, a mere medium god, possibly block it? This, Gue Wukong and Shenruoi, who were watching from the side, gasped. Their faces were full of shock. The terror of Nie Tian was beyond their imagination. Not only did Nie Tian completely crush Jiang Qiji in terms of martial body, even when the latter used a Xingtian armor, he was able to block it with a single sword strike. This kind of strength was unimaginable. If Nie Tian possessed the strength of a main god and was able to fight against Jiang Qiji, Gue Wukong, and Shenruoi could still accept it, albeit reluctantly. However, Nie Tian was only a god. He was not even a greater god. How could he fend off Jiang Qiji, a late overgod? Nie Tian's performance subverted their understanding of martial arts. At this moment, Nie Tian looked at Jiang Qiji, and his lips twitched slightly. He thought, this guy really is a late overgod after all. If it weren't for the essence of sword, his punch would have been enough to heavily injure me. Although Nie Tian managed to withstand Jiang Qiji's punch, he was injured. Before activating the 3 great forbidden techniques, Nie Tian would have a hard time fighting Jiang Qiji head-on. The 3 forbidden techniques were his strongest trump cards, and he couldn't use them carelessly. That's impossible. At this moment, Jiang Qiji's eyes flickered with shock. What replaced it was an intense killing intent, after which his silhouette flickered as the aura around him surged up crazily. A violent chi gushed into every inch of space, as though it wanted to tear the space apart. Nie Tian's eyes darkened. Jiang Qiji had actually made up his mind to kill. Although Jiang Qiji was very arrogant, Nie Tian had no plans to kill him. Unfortunately, Jiang Qiji did not think that way. He felt a great threat from Nie Tian, so he had to kill him. Nie Tian's eyes flickered slightly, and a sliver of killing intent flowed out. If Jiang Qiji insisted on killing him, Nie Tian would only have one choice, and that was to stop the killing by killing. Jiang Qiji was very powerful, but if Nie Tian used the 3 great forbidden techniques and used the Trine demonic sword range, it would be enough to kill Jiang Qiji in a single stroke. Damn brat, die. In the next moment, Jiang Qiji's cold face twisted. He roared out furiously, and with a single movement he actually struck out. Bang! However, at this moment, the void suddenly shook strangely, and then a terrifying force descended. After a muffled sound, Jiang Qiji's figure directly flew out and smashed heavily on the ground, leaving a trail of blood on the ground. The others were stunned and looked at Sun Luo's 7 knights in unison. The one who attacked was him. Although Sun Luo's 7 knights had just become a supreme god not long ago, it was still easy for him to suppress Jiang Qiji. Enough! Sun Luo's 7 knights took a step forward, and his aura was like a rainbow. He looked at Jiang Qiji with cold eyes and said in a cold voice, "Today's matter ends here." Jiang Qiji crawled up, shook off the blood on his body, and stared at Nie Tian viciously, but did not dare to act rashly again. With a faint smile, Nie Tian let out a long breath. He did not want to use the 3 great forbidden techniques, and killing Jiang Qiji would not do him any good. Sun Luo's 7 knights stopping Jiang Qiji was the best result. Seeing that the battle had been stopped, Rui Qinyu arrived beside Nie Tian and asked nervously, "Nie Tian, are you all right?" "I'm fine." Nie Tian smiled lightly. The injuries he had suffered earlier were simply nothing to him. "Nie Tian, you really did not disappoint me." Sun Luo's 7 knights landed beside Nie Tian and smiled lightly. Earlier, Sun Luo's 7 knights had deliberately attacked a bit later. He wanted to see exactly how powerful Nie Tian's battle power was. Earlier, Feng Biyu had told him that Nie Tian had fought against over a dozen overgods by himself. At that time, he had doubted it. However, after seeing Nie Tian's current performance, he firmly believed it. Furthermore, Sun Luo's 7 knights could sense that there was an extremely terrifying power in Nie Tian's body. If that power had exploded, Jiang Qiji would likely have lost his life. "Lord Palace Master, since the 5 of us are going to enter the forbidden land of martialism together, we need a leader." Nie Tian smiled lightly. His gaze swept past Jiang Qiji, Gui Wukan, and Chen Ruoyi, and he said indifferently, "I hope that I'm the leader." "I'm the leader." Nie Tian's voice was very calm, but it was filled with a domineering aura that no one could defy. He could tell that Jiang Qiji and the other 2 were not easy to deal with. In order for the 9 neonate forbidden hunt to proceed smoothly, it was necessary for him to establish his position as the leader. Nie Tian did this to better protect Rui Qinyu's safety. When Sun Luo's 7 knights heard Nie Tian's words, he could not help but frown. Then he laughed and looked at Jiang Qiji and the others. He asked, "What do you think about Nie Tian being your leader?" Jiang Qiji's eyes trembled. The fury in his eyes became even more intense, but he did not say anything. He had lost to Nie Tian and no longer had the right to speak. "I agree." Unexpectedly, Gui Wukan stood out and agreed with Nie Tian being the leader. He said, "During the 9 neonate forbidden hunt, warriors can only use the power of their martial bodies. Nie Tian's martial body is stronger than Xing Tian's bloodline. Of course, he has the right to be the leader." "I also agree." Chen Ruoyi's eyes flickered and she nodded in agreement. Rui Qinyu did not say anything. She would definitely stand on Nie Tian's side. "Good. From now on, your team of 5 will be led by Nie Tian. After entering the forbidden land of martialism, everyone must listen to his orders." Sun Luo's 7 knights smiled indifferently. His gaze towards Nie Tian was mixed with a trace of complexity. Jiang Qiji stared coldly at Nie Tian. His expression was extremely ugly. Originally, he thought that the position of leader was his. He did not expect that Nie Tian would appear out of nowhere and snatched the position away. Chapter 1700. Nietian saw all of Jiang Qiji's reactions, but he said nothing and pretended he did not see anything. He did not intend to kill Jiang Qiji right now, but if Jiang Qiji obstructed him during the 9-infant forbidden hunt, he would not show any mercy. Everyone, go back and prepare. In 5 days, I will take you to the forbidden land of martialism. Sunluo, 7 Knights, smiled faintly, indicating that Nietian and the others could leave. Nietian and Rui Qinyu did not stay any longer. They turned around and left. Nietian glanced at Gue Wuchan and thought of something. He hesitated, but did not say it. Before the Sword Elder left, he had asked Nietian to find a person called Gue Wu Kwangsha in the God Investiture region. Nietian guessed that Gue Wuchan and Gue Wu Kwang Sha might be related. However, he did not ask directly. It would instead raise Gue Wuchan's suspicions. After returning to the courtyard, Nietian and Rui Qinyu spoke for a while before returning to his room. I wonder what kind of people we'll meet in the 9-infant forbidden hunt. Nietian mumbled and smiled faintly. He was not nervous at all. Instead, he was a little expectant. According to Sunluo, 7 Knights, the forbidden land of martialism was a world even higher than the upper realms. It had countless subsidiary worlds, and the Sunluo Ghost region was only one of them. Every time, 18 subsidiary worlds would participate in the 9-infant forbidden hunt. Each subsidiary world would send 10 cultivators, so there would be a total of 180 people. In the end, only 9 people would remain. The chance of survival was not too low. However, Nietian knew that those who could participate in the 9-infant forbidden hunt were the peak geniuses of their subsidiary worlds. Every single one of them was a genius among geniuses. It was not easy to survive among 180 people. Fortunately, there were martial restrictions in the 9-infant forbidden hunt. Cultivators could not use their Yuan meridians or godheads. As a result, cultivators with powerful martial bodies had a great advantage. Even without using the 3 forbidden techniques, Nietian's martial body was equivalent to peak overgods. If he used the 3 forbidden techniques, he could fend off overgods. But that was just a comparison of martial bodies. If Nietian were to fight a paramount god right now, he would be killed in a single move. Even if it was an expert like Jiang Qiji, it would be very difficult for Nietian to defeat him without using the 3 great forbidden techniques. Paramount gods really are strong, Yang Qi murmured. Thinking back to how he had sent Jiang Qiji flying with a single move, Nietian couldn't help but chuckle bitterly. After all, he was still far from being a peak paramount god. Only by continuously becoming stronger could Nietian survive and protect his family and friends. Nietian, this Jiao-Ing forbidden hunt is interesting. At that moment, Fat Cat appeared and chuckled. If you can win, you should think about what you want. 7-leaf dragon tongue orchid, Nietian blurted out without hesitation. If he won, he definitely wanted the 7-leaf dragon tongue orchid. Fat Cat looked at Nietian and rolled her eyes. Heaven of 9 Infants is a powerful organization from ancient times. If you win the Jiao-Ing forbidden hunt and only want a 7-leaf dragon tongue orchid, wouldn't that be looking down on them? Nietian's face darkened. However, Fat Cat's words made sense. Heaven of 9 Infants was a powerful organization that controlled the forbidden land of martialism. They even had cultivators with 7 pupils and 9 colored pupils. Nietian estimated that Heaven of 9 Infants was even stronger than the Holy Parliament and the Wind and Cloud Alliance. It was indeed inappropriate for such a powerful organization to only want a 7-leaf dragon tongue orchid. Then what do I want? Nietian was stunned. He was at a loss. I already have an answer. I'll tell you in the future. Fat Cat chuckled and disappeared. Nietian was stunned. The Jiao-Ing forbidden hunt hadn't even started. Wasn't it too early to think about what would happen after he won? Lian Jiufeng. Nietian became cold. A name suddenly appeared in his mind, causing him to frown. When he first entered Sunluo City, he met Lian Jiufeng and the others. He didn't know why they came to Sunluo Ghost region. Could it be? Nietian's expression changed. He suddenly realized something and exclaimed, "Jiao Ing Forbidden Hunt." He suddenly thought that Lian Jiofeng came to Sinluo Ghost Region for the Jiao Ing Forbidden Hunt. Previously, the Ghost King Palace Master wanted to make a deal with Nie Tian, but Nie Tian rejected. Nie Tian guessed that the Ghost King Palace Master wanted him to participate in the Jiao Ing Forbidden Hunt. The Ghost King Palace Master also had 5 spots for the Forbidden Hunt. Therefore, it wasn't strange for him to cooperate with the nets above, snares below. The more Nie Tian thought about it, the more believable it seemed. Lian Jiofeng probably came for the Jiao Ing Forbidden Hunt. After that, he didn't think too much. Everything would be revealed when the Jiao Ing Forbidden Hunt began. 5 days later, Nie Tian walked out of the room. His aura was much stronger than a few days ago, but his strength was still at the peak of Middle God. It was difficult to advance to the next level in the godly state. Nie Tian's strength improved very quickly before, because he had all kinds of fortuitous encounters and fused different kinds of powers. If he cultivated normally, it would take him at least several years to break through to High God. Rui Qianyu's figure appeared. Rain and Tawny stood behind her. Rain's consciousness hadn't completely recovered, but it was much better than a few days ago. Nie Tian, Qianya, be careful. Tawny didn't know what Nie Tian and Rui Qianyu were going to do, but she could feel that they were going to do something very dangerous. Don't worry, Nie Tian smiled faintly. He had already informed Wen Buyu to help take care of Tawny and the others. Although Wen Buyu was a little crazy, he was a trustworthy person. Nie Tian asked Tawny and the others to stay in Sinluo Temple for the time being. He then passed the Wind Cloud badge to her and told her that she could take it to the Nie family or the Wind and Cloud Alliance if anything happened. After everything was arranged, Nie Tian and Rui Qianyu left together. Then, they met up with the other 3 and followed Sinluo 7 Nights and Wen Buyu to the sky above Sinluo Ghost Region. In the sky above Sinluo Ghost Region, the aura of space-time was extremely strong. Terrifying space-time vortexes surged in the air, and space-time storms swirled rapidly. They were like abysses that could devour everything. Every space-time vortex was a space-time gate. No one knew where they would lead to. This must be the sea of space-time. Nie Tian mumbled in his heart. He sensed the surrounding space-time vortexes and felt the origin embryo space in his body become agitated, as if it had sensed something. That's the space-time gate that leads to the forbidden land of martialism, Sinluo 7 Nights said in a deep voice as he pointed at a huge space-time vortex in the distance. Nie Tian looked at the space-time vortex and felt the intense aura of space-time. His eyes couldn't help but shudder. He had seen space-time vortexes before, but they were incomparable to the one before him. The surging aura of space-time was extremely violent, as if it could tear everything apart. He really didn't know how it was possible to enter such a terrifying space-time vortex. Temple Lord Sinluo, long time no see. At that moment, a faintly discernible voice resounded in the sky. Then, a figure appeared and stood not far away from Nie Tian and the others. Ghost King Palace Lord. Nie Tian's eyes trembled when he heard the voice. He immediately guessed the person's identity. He suddenly turned around and saw a familiar ghost mask. There were several figures standing behind the mask. One of them was not unfamiliar. It was Lian Jiofeng.